And after a long spell of absence, we are finally back. I'm Luke Caverns. This is Raiders of the Past podcast, and I'm joined today by my lovely co-host, Johanna James. Johanna, how are you?
Good evening. I'm all right. I'm so excited to hear about your first ever trip to Egypt.
Yeah, it was honestly amazing and a bit emotional.
Yeah,
I
it's unreal.
yeah, so I flew out of Houston, Texas, and let me think. So my flight to Istanbul was about 13 hours, and surprisingly went by faster than I thought it was going to. And then I had a long layover in Istanbul that just seemed to go. It seemed to just continuously get delayed, and so I was thinking. So my very first morning, my plan was to meet up with Land of Chem. And have you ever met him in person, by the way, or just spoken to
Jeffrey,
him?
no, we just did like a 3 hour YouTube for my channel, and
Okay.
yeah, like we speak a lot, but we've never met in person.
Yeah. So my first day, I had plans to meet up with him at Giza, or at the Giza Plateau, and so I mean, and I didn't schedule an arrest day. I just had it packed from beginning to end. So my goal was to land around 11 p.m. Should be able to get to my hotel. I stayed at the Royal Pyramid Inn, which was across the street from the Grand Egyptian Museum, the new one.
Oh
And
wow, yeah, okay.
yeah, it was amazing. And so, anyways, my flight arrival got pushed back from 11 p.m. to like 3 a.m. So I ended up arriving at 3 a.m. and my poor driver, Hani, he had waited for me for like 5 or 6 hours to arrive, and it kept on getting pushed back and pushed back. And then getting through immigration took forever. And
Yeah, it takes it's a big
and
airport.
so anyways, finally get to my driver, get from the Cairo airport all the way to Giza, and it's now 4 a.m. and I've got to be meeting Land of Chem at Giza at 7. So I take all my stuff to the room and I go up to the top floor, and there's this restaurant up there, and I'm basically looking out from the restaurant, and I'm like, where are the pyramids? They're supposed to be out here. It's just pitch black sky. And then I'm looking, I can't see them. And then I go, and I look up, and the pyramids are the sky in front of
You're
me.
like, oh,
And I can't believe I'm admitting this publicly. I just broke down crying. I don't know if it was just the stress of how long
there is no shame.
I was so tired.
Human emotions.
Yeah, I was just like weeping that I was finally standing here looking at the pyramids. And so I'm sitting there crying, and I don't think there's anybody up there. And then all of a sudden, this young waiter behind me taps me on the shoulder and hands me some tissues, and I was just thinking, oh, this is very, very embarrassing.
Yeah.
So anyways, ended up
hey, what's he called? Aragorn cries, Luke.
Oh yeah.
Real men cry.
Yeah. So so I ended up going down to my hotel room and finally fall asleep around 5, and I'm up, or maybe like 4:30, and I'm up at, I don't even know, 6 or something, 6:30.
Yeah.
And I meet Land of Chem at Giza. And so I met him and his lovely wife as well. And man, that guy knows everything about northern Egypt. He's been to probably every pyramid in northern Egypt. And so here I'll pull up I got a couple of slides, just some photos that I can use as a reference on here.
Yeah, I give full respect to Jeffrey. He moved out there. I remember it was when he just moved out to Egypt that I connected with him, and I really, really respect that the guy looks at everything upside down, inside out, from like really left field. And he has some very interesting ideas, and I love that he physically scrambles over every rock.
He's a very impressive man.
I'd love to go out and meet him and his lovely wife properly.
Yeah, he knows so much. Even just the logistics of getting around Egypt, and what the ins and outs are and what you can and can't do. Very, very knowledgeable guy. I was lucky to be able to meet up with him. So, I got about 25 photos here that really don't well encapsulate the entirety of the trip, but there's no way we're gonna be able to get through, if I had like 400 or 500 on here. So anyway, so we start the day. We started the first day at Giza on like 90 minutes of sleep. And so Jeff took me into the Great Pyramid. We went to the King's Chamber, and this is just a photo of me in the King's Chamber. And
that's insane. Look at the size of that like lintel corner square.
Very, very surreal being in there. And that corner square probably goes back, 4 or 5 feet, I would say.
Yeah, it is thick. You have to crawl right through. I'm going under there going, please do not fall on me.
Oh yeah, just absolutely gigantic. When I was when I left Peru, and I was saying, I don't know how Egypt is going to compare because Peru is just so amazing. I couldn't have been more wrong. I could not have possibly been more wrong. There is nothing in the ancient world that even comes close to comparing to the size of the monuments and the stones in Egypt. There's nothing that comes close. And it's just the Giza Plateau in general, the size of the Giza Plateau completely dwarfs all in size, all of Mesoamerica and South America, and probably the Greek world and the Roman world and the Mesopotamian world. Just Giza. That's not including everything else in Egypt. It was just that impressive. I've never, ever seen anything like this before.
And this is just the area that's been excavated and the sand pushed back, because it literally goes out. You're on the edge of the Sahara, and I'm just thinking, if this is all the structures and tunnels that we have access or semi-access to that we know of, and they're still finding more and more of them, imagine what's like literally heading out into the desert and under the sands. I'm like, I bet any money there's more structures and things, and heading as far as the eye can see.
Absolutely. And Jeff, we actually we snuck over to this one little area. I think they called it there's a lot of places called the Tombs of the Nobles. But it was this other little corner of Giza called the Tombs of the Nobles. And it was absolutely just everywhere I walked on the Giza Plateau, there was like a 40-foot shaft that went straight into the ground, or some hole that went back into this into the side of this cliff face, and it would be gated, and if you shine a flashlight back there, it was just this endless tunnel that went back, or the tunnels would loop around between these little canyons and crevices, and all these different aspects of the Giza Plateau that I never knew existed. I was seeing it in person. I had no idea how dense it was. It's like a complete pin cushion out there, and I agree with you. So I don't know if you did this in the times that you were there, but you take that roundabout way to Giza where you can look on the right side of your bus and you see the desert, and the desert just spans out all the way to the horizon where the pyramids are standing. That whole desert has to be full of structures out there.
Structure 100%, and all of the under all of the under tunneling. I can't wait until they invent some sort of like micro drone that's about an inch, and you can just fly it like a bumblebee, and then you could just scan every tunnel and hole underground and get all kinds of reverse underground radar.
They're getting close to that. DJI actually just invented this thing called the Neo, and it's like a $200 drone that's probably the size of your palm, and it takes off from your palm, and it's self-guiding. It has cameras on 6 sides, like these little cameras, and it can fly through a forest without hitting anything. And
that's amazing.
Oh yeah. And they just came out with this too. So in like 5 years, who knows where the technology is going to be. And
annoyingly, you can't bring drones in Egypt. They are so specific. At the airport, they'll take apart anything that you've got. They're really funny about equipment. You have to.
They thought I had a drone. But Anyway, sorry guys, I'm still kind of. I went to Guatemala after Egypt, and I got some kind of sickness from the jungle, and I'm still sort of
You're just
overcoming that. So if I
you're like
sound,
just name dropping now, just flexing on where you've
yeah,
been.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, just guys, I just went to the indigenous mountains of Peru and caught a bug.
Yeah, that was probably the craziest month of my life, and I thought that I would feel totally fine afterwards, and it literally took me
No.
7 days just to get to a point where I felt normal again when I
Think
got
of the
home.
bacterias your body was hitting and the
Yeah,
time zones, and yeah, I think going to Egypt, you need to prep going to Egypt like you're doing some sort of marathon or some sort of like Ironman
yeah, oh
kind of
yeah,
competition. It's like stealth and stamina, heat
yeah,
resistance.
yeah, absolutely. It wasn't easy. I mean, I was walking 30,000 steps a day for like 5 weeks straight, and just a lot. So anyways, Jeff, Land of Chem, took me into well, we went into the Great Pyramid. They had
Mhm,
Khafre's pyramid closed, and then we went
mhm.
into Menkare's pyramid. And he just consistently blew my mind with aspects of the pyramids that I honestly can't even. I wouldn't even do him justice if I was trying to repeat it. I filmed a lot of it, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna put out a video, like a collab video with him.
Great.
Um, but he showed me so many aspects of the pyramids. And for anybody listening, Land of Chem, it's a play on Egypt's ancient name, which is Kemet, the Black
Commit.
Land, and so his theory is that the pyramids are, chemical processing plants. That's it. That's his alternate theory.
That they're
And
like industrial sites, yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah, and he has a lot of really compelling evidence for it. Things that he showed me on the Giza Plateau and at Dashur, which we'll get to, that I didn't even know exist, and I can't really come up with great alternate explanations for.
yeah. Like the what's interesting is there are parts of the pyramid which have like exit um
Mhm,
sort of exit holes or exit channels and tunnels, which again is really weird. If
mhm,
it's a tomb, like why do you need to remove or exit anything that would be like either water or chemical or air or whatever? But there's parts
mhm,
of the sides of pyramids that I've watched on his YouTube that he's gone, see, look at the back here.
mhm.
This here was originally, that was his theory, originally part of how you would get things in and out
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
certain
yeah.
pyramids, things like that that are they're just like oddities that you're like, okay, there was a reason why someone is fully designed, but it looks functional.
Yeah, there was a lot of strange stuff like that. Um, he had some aspects inside the Great Pyramid that I found interesting, but what was most interesting was outside the Great Pyramid. There are these iron ore veins that run away in 360 degrees, are
Hmm.
running. So you have this primordial natural mound that the Great Pyramid is built on top of. And from that mound, in all angles, these iron veins are running out from underneath the pyramid.
Hmm.
Found that really strange. Um, and then he had a lot of interesting things to say at Dashur inside the pyramid, and I got a long video of him explaining that, but we'll get to that. So he took me through the Great Pyramids at Giza, and then he showed me around some of the shafts that are out there, like
Hmm.
the Osiris shaft, and when you walk down Khafre's causeway, he's like, yeah, that's the entrance to the Osiris shaft right there, and I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's pretty,
Did you
unceremonious, isn't it?
did you go down there?
No, no, no.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that is like the most scariest thing I've done
Mm.
in Egypt. Is
Really,
just
really. So, okay, yeah. So take me through it.
so you go in that entrance that you saw that's literally just on the side of the causeway. You just hop down and there's the
Yeah,
entrance.
yeah.
You
It's
wouldn't even know what
totally
it is. Yeah,
unceremonious. If
yeah.
you didn't know it was there, you
You'd
wouldn't know
never
it was
know.
there.
Just looks
Yeah.
like a hole in the rock. And then you go in and then you descend down 3 levels. There's 3 lots of complete straight drop ladders
Mhm.
that you have to, just like old metal disintegrating ladders. I think that they've made a new ladder since I went down like 3 4 in 2020, so 3 4
Mhm.
years ago. But this ladder is like this old thing, and you're going down. I think overall you're going over 100 feet or 120 feet.
Wow.
So you go down to the first level, and then it's like a little room, and then you go down the big drop to the second level, and it's like it looks very much like either the Osirian, or it's kind of, you're in a room with I think 6 or 8 little side cubby holes, and in there are these big sarcophagus, what they call them, the big granite boxes. Some of them aren't granite. One of them is a type of stone that's not found. There's no quarry for it in Egypt. So, and they got them down that tunnel. And it's, what's really weird is that the size of the shaft to go down is literally the size of the boxes. Wow. Very weird. And then you go down another level, and then you which is on the very bottom level, and the room is filling up with water because the water table's rising. And in the middle there was a huge, like, Saqqara size granite box. And then there are 2 tunnels. One tunnel has been bricked off by Zayawas and his team.
Is this the one where he's on the news and there's this gigantic tunnel behind him and he goes, "Oh, what's back there? Nobody knows. Nothing. We haven't gone back there."
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's nothing there, and they block it off with like concrete. And then there's like the water's getting in somehow from some tunnels, but those 2 tunnels, and it's interesting because one tunnel's going one way, would follow the causeway up and hit right at the central pyramid, and then the other one, the tunnel goes exactly the other way and would hit right at the Sphinx. Mm-hmm. So it's obviously all connected all on the side, but it was really scary to descend the final one because obviously there's water, but then there's also the wall is just a wall of cockroaches.
Oh, really?
So it felt like proper Indiana, just like
that's awesome.
Do not disturb it. But I've only been down the once, and it was terrifying. Oh, and there's loads of human bones everywhere just to make it extra spooky.
Yeah, we saw
and hands and things.
Saw some of that too. That's incredible. I did not know that much about the Osiris shaft. I heard that there were supposedly burials down there, but I didn't know that there were actual sarcophagi down there.
Oh yeah, there was. I mean, I think there's 3 remaining granite boxes, and one of them has a weird sticky substance all over it. Although I think that they got to the bottom of that.
Mummy juice.
No, not mummy juice. They think that it's actually in the 1920s. They took down either pump machines to pump the water, or they took down some sort of like oil lamp or some like it's like grease fluid. Or they tested some of the goo, and it came out as like kind of 70-year-old oil grease or something. So it's not something from the but there's one box that's made of this type of stone that is not found anywhere. There's no quarry for it in Egypt. So it must have come from so far away, like literally another country. And why would you need a box? Why would you bring it so far?
Sure.
Like for what purpose? Again, like there's no bodies in the boxes. And all of the bodies that they find there, I think they're probably going to be like not modern bones, but I don't think they're older than maybe 1,000 years old. They're but interesting, there's a doctor went down just who was on the tour, and he started to notice, just because he knows bones, that it was all right hands.
Really?
And only right hands. He was like, hey, there's no left hands here. There's all right hands. Or it's the other way around. There's only left hands. It was all one hand anyway.
Yeah. That is odd.
So if anyone would like to like unpuzzle that puzzle. Why is there just?
But these are all 1,000-year-old bodies.
I mean, I don't think anybody's checked. I don't think they're like maybe ancient Egyptian. Maybe they are, but I have a feeling that they're probably from over the centuries.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Well, I heard when I was there. So we went through a different place called Tombs of the Nobles that was in Aswan. Do you remember being in Aswan and you look across the river and there's that cliffside where there's all the holes in the cliffs?
Yes.
Yeah. So I took a boat and went there one morning and walked around there. and they opened up one of the tombs, and it was this tomb with, all the paint still intact. It was just a rock cut tomb.
Nice.
And clearly carved probably during the New Kingdom, let's say 1300 BC. But all the bones in there were Roman bones, which are 2000-ish years later. So I had learned that so many of the bones that are found in Egypt are from people going in and removing the body of somebody who was once there and then burying themselves there instead. So it wouldn't surprise me if people just, I don't know, people during Roman or the Christian or Islamic eras just saw these places as a place they wanted to be buried one day and had the means to get their bodies, shoved down there.
I feel like that's what I mean by, I feel like the bones there, I don't think would accurately date who made it, because I don't think the bodies that are down there, I don't think have anything to do with the original purpose and function of the shaft and the tunnels and the boxes. And yeah, it's and Land of Chem has he has a video on it actually, because he was saying that there's a way that you could, because they've been, I think it's because the box of this stone has been out of the sunlight completely, because it's 2 levels underground.
Yes.
There might be a way to like bioluminescence test it, because it's not sitting up there, and either it has been tested or he was calling for it to be tested.
Yes. Well, and for anyone listening, this isn't like woo-woo skepticism at all. This is science, that those crystals build up energy when they're not exposed to the light. And you can somehow drill a core in there, and you can use, I don't know, bioluminescence dating. And basically, when you shine a light on these little crystals, they will microscopically explode. And I'm probably butchering the explanation for this, but you can test the last time that these things were exposed to sunlight.
Yeah, and, which gives you like a rule of thumb of when it could have been either moved or created and cut and like set in that position. So it gives you a good rule of thumb.
Did you
if you're talking 500 years or 5,000 is a difference.
Did you see any carving on those boxes that were down there?
No, it's all like that pre-4th dynasty. A lot of the Giza plateau is in that like really minimalist megalithic, no design, no glyphs, nothing. It's all of that era. Oh, actually, I found out something interesting recently from Ben Van Kerkwick's site, Uncharted X, his YouTube channel. He's been looking into the boxes that were on Elephantine Island. You know, those are kind of like TARDIS boxes that they were in the Holy of Holies in a lot of places. They were attributed a lot to the later dynasties, but they've just found evidence of reuse of one in the Old Kingdom. So they were saying that these boxes there's evidence that they were being created at the other end of the dynasties.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
So that either you could create them, they weren't creating them the whole way through. So either they were recycling and reusing them at the end of the dynasties, the ones that were created a lot earlier or even pre-dynasty, or well, and actually, yeah, that's it. That it just proves that they were definitely about thousands of years earlier than they thought. So that's exciting.
Sure. And so I saw those, whether or not they were, I saw depictions of them everywhere. So when you walk into these rock cut tombs, they're like carved images. So I always butcher the name of it or the pronunciation, but naos boxes or naos. That's what they're called. And it's interesting to me because I was in Peru, and those little niches, those little doorways to nowhere.
Oh yeah,
false doors. Sure, those false doors. It's thought of in Peru that they're not just mummy niches, that it's more like a portal. Like it's a connection between you and this outer world. And I just found it interesting that, whether or not Egyptians from the New Kingdom are looking back at, an image that had been around for a long time and ascribing their own significance to it, they would put that naos box portal thing above their tomb, and it almost like it was a door for them to be able to access this next world. But yeah, those boxes are very, very interesting, and interesting that they're so similar to the sarcophagi, although we don't necessarily ascribe them the same purpose. But anywho, it
The
doesn't.
skill to make them is that the polished granite, it's a kind of like they've taken a granite box that we call a sarcophagi and then turned it up on itself to make
Yeah,
it like an entrance box, and then obviously the top is like pyramid shape.
sure.
But then they've got all this intricate like beveling, and they're able to do like, it looks like piping but in granite, and you're able to make this granite circular piping on top of a box on with a pyramid. It's like, it's so intricate and amazing. But the idea that but the proof that they found evidence of it in a at least fourth dynasty old kingdom
Yeah.
use. I'm like, oh, these boxes are old.
I totally believe it. I wouldn't even surprise me. Even if we're just confined to the 3100 BC timeline is when dynastic Egypt begins, it wouldn't surprise me if all that stuff that you see in the New Kingdom all came from the Old Kingdom. Yeah, that just is such the what they were doing before. The more popular areas of Egyptology as the New Kingdom was. I mean, it was all already happening thousands of years before, Hatshepsut and Amenhotep and all of them were around. All of it had already been done.
Okay, question. Now that you've been to Egypt and you've seen it with your own eyes and you've seen the sites, can you see, like, visually the kind of the different styles that are attributed to the same periods, but can you see them
Yeah.
like kind of being built on top of each other or reused? Can you?
Sure. Yeah. There was a huge, it's really, really odd. It was overwhelmingly obvious to me why the fourth dynasty, what the monuments that they attribute to them are so compelling, because it is just so alien compared to everything else in Egypt, even the things that come before it and the things that come after it. Completely different. I think the thing I was most blown away by was the Valley Temple. I think of every place in Egypt, I think that temple impressed me more than anything. That granite architecture that's there that encases those limestone blocks. I don't think there's anything that impressive on the entire planet. The skill level to be able to do that is so astronomically out of left field, and is not really replicated. Correct me if I'm wrong though, but I don't see anything like that anywhere else in Egypt either. It was that spectacular. The casing stones inside the king's chamber absolutely blew my mind. The size of the lintels on the ceiling are bigger than the biggest stones in Peru. Do you remember in Peru at that Temple of the Moon? I said there's that stone on the bottom, and that's like the biggest stone in all of the Americas. All 5 of the stones in the ceiling of the king's chamber, or it might be more than 5, like 5, 6, or 7. All of those are bigger than that stone. Just,
I think they're bigger than my house, to be honest. Which is
if you put them all together.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Definitely.
Yeah, thinking about my apartment, I would imagine those 5 stones could not fit in my home. But I mean, just really, really miraculous and unexplainable. It is so different. It is so different. I haven't had time to truly wrap my mind around it. Because there's nothing in Egypt that compares to any of that at all. Nothing in the entire world that compares to that.
Seeing the Sphinx, because the Sphinx is an amazing optical illusion in photography. Because of, depending on the angle that you look at it, it can look kind of normal. But when you see it in real life, how ridiculously tiny the head looks.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, I totally think it had a different head on it.
I think it was repurposed. Old Dynasty, they repurposed it into a pharaoh. Whatever it was before.
Sure.
Who can say? But like,
I think the 2 other options would be that it was a lion, or that it was Anubis. And I don't really think the Anubis head would work out. I don't think you can get that limestone to hold up the snout, and I
No.
don't think you can get it to hold up the ears.
Also, I think that looking at cats and dogs, the tail is and it's so
Sure.
cat-like.
Yeah.
Because I know cats and dogs are a bit similar, but it's a cat, and also because the iconography that is repeated again and again. I guess you do have Anubis, but its majority of sphinxes are lions, just everywhere in the artwork, so I think that I think it's probably, if I was going to hedge a bet, I would say it was a feline character that had it. And it makes sense that the original head would have been the size of a cat, and then they would have gone, now let's whack it back, make it look like a pharaoh.
And it's noticeably too small for the body.
It's ridiculous. It's like,
yeah.
I feel like I'm a qualified stonemason, and I'm just like, no, that's completely wrong. I'd do a better job.
Yeah, it looks like if you increase the head by like 30 or 40%, it would fit more, which makes me think that they decreased the head by 30 or 40% to put a face on there, or to get a pharaoh's face on there. I don't think that I think that that's pretty likely that they did that, and I mean, it clearly there's a precedent in Egypt for repurposing, reattributing monuments, stealing monuments, I should say.
Recycling, repurposing, renovating, reinstall, like the same way that we do today. People buy an old house, and what do? They rip it out and renovate it, and it looks massively decorate. And also, like, decorations change. Like, you wouldn't buy a house from the 50s and be like, this looks great. I mean, actually, some people would love that aesthetic, but yeah, we're constantly like changing our aesthetic as cultures, and inside the back of the Sphinx, there's like, I'm going to say there's 9 sort of entrances around, all in and around the Sphinx.
Oh wow, I didn't know there were that many.
I think there's 6 to 9. I'll say that, but because some of them don't go really that far. Obviously, the pores at the entrance that's right in between the pores has been concrete off, because they did that for some reason that they won't say why. But in the back, when you go up the back, it goes up and it splits into 2. If you crawl literally right up the butthole of the cat, you can it goes into 2 ways. And if you go one way, it does go to a sort of round the corner to a dead end. But it's there. You can see there are papers that you can like research, peer-reviewed papers, where that's where they found old kingdom repair works from the inside. You can see where they were repairing holes in the structure.
Was it? It's like the 5th dynasty was supposedly repairing it, or the 6th dynasty, 150 years later after they built it.
Old kingdoms. And if you, I mean, the fact that, look around Egypt, and most of it is still in pretty good nick from 4,000 years, moving on 5,000 years, and you're like, why would you need to repair it that much? And why would you need to like record the repairing of it? It's weird that we have recorded in writing the repairing of the Sphinx, but we don't have in writing anywhere the building of the pyramids. That's odd.
The only thing I wonder about the building is if it's meant to be a secret. Jeffrey and I, we were talking about that. He was using it to support his own theory that that they have like an industrial purpose. But he was saying, well, it's not something that even the normal people of Egypt would be allowed to know. It's something that only the stonemasons. We had a long conversation about that industry, how it probably could have worked, and he was saying, the League of Stonemasons is probably something that's very exclusive. Like, it's a higher class of people. It's not just, your low class people that are making these sarcophagi, making these naos boxes, making the pyramids. It's not your lower class people designing it. This is all upper class secrets, so I can see that how it could be a mystery, but then also, we're kind of going between 2 things, because if we're talking about a lost civilization doing this, it's hard to have I'm trying to think of there's a lot of nuance to the conversation, but it wouldn't make sense at the same time for them to depict themselves moving those Memnon statues with all the workers pulling them, pulling the
Mhm.
liquid in front of it. If they're depicting that, even though that is, at the very least, it's like 1,500 years after, the
Later.
youngest date of the pyramids. But it just is interesting. There's so much more
Mhm.
nuance, and it's so much more complicated than I initially thought that it was going to be. I thought that it was going to be very black and white, and like
Mhm.
on the spectrums, you look at one end to the other, it is black and white, but it's weird how there are artifacts that will cross between, where like you'll find I found a really stunning granite sacrificial altar thing with the most well polished hieroglyphs, and this scarab that was in the middle, where the scarab like pours off, some kind of liquid from the middle. Just
Mhm.
stunning, like out of a movie, in this, kind of I don't know, middle class rock cut tomb,
Mhm.
and so I'd see that granite artifact, which is probably about this big, and then at every uh, at every museum I went into, I would find a granite, maybe a black or red granite sarcophagus, where the hieroglyphs are just like scratched into the surface, and
Oh,
you can't even see it.
mate. There is one of my favorite artifacts in the Cairo Museum. I don't know which one it's in now because they might be spread across two, but it's the oldest depiction of the oldest statue, and it's a I believe it's black diorite. No, sorry,
Is it a
bas
Khafre statue?
basalt. It is it's supposed to well, they think it represents the second dynasty pharaoh,
Okay, okay.
and it's only about, I don't know, about 3 foot
Oh, okay, okay,
tall,
okay.
and it's of him sitting down, and it's in this shiny black diorite or basalt, like
Mhm,
one of the
mhm.
even harder than granite, and it's in this thing, and it has a little label that says like second dynasty pharaoh, and it's supposed to be the first depiction of a pharaoh that they
Mhm.
have. And I was like, amazing, how did they find that? And they were like, well, look at the inscription on it. And I kid you not, this inscription, it's it's one of the best examples of the inscription not doing any justice to the artist that made this little
Mm,
sculpture,
mhm, mhm.
considering as well it's a very small, like the detail in this seated man, and it's like scratchings, and then and it's I was laughing about it, and that is the only and that says that is was that's how they date it, and that's how they thought it was the second pharaoh.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion that somebody might have inherited that little statue
Sure,
and
sure.
then attributed it to the second pharaoh when they were like starting up. Um,
Sure. Yeah,
so
there were so many artifacts like that, where it just kind of blew my mind, where, I'd be walking through, the, so at the Cairo Museum, the old
mhm,
Cairo Museum, there's when you walk in on the left, there's these 3 red granite sarcophagi that are all from 4th dynasty, I believe,
yeah,
and all of them have these just really not impressive hieroglyphs on them. And I tried to get the best photos that I could of this on my camera, and
mhm,
they'll come out in a video at some point. And but I'm going to do this long video where I go into how strange it is that some places have, although it's rare, some places have really impressive hieroglyphs and carving on them, and then
mhm,
other places with sarcophagi that are attributed to what should be very important people have worse hieroglyphs than some random thing that I
yeah,
found at the Tomb of the Nobles that's supposedly 2,000 years younger. Just there's a lot of strange stuff there that really. Oh, so what you were saying about that black statue. Um, so when you went throughout Egypt, did you ever notice that there is this really common statue, and it's like they're like Easter eggs they're spread all around Egypt. There's like
mhm,
30 of them, but they're the Khafre statues, the diorite Khafre statues, where he's got the falcon on his shoulder. Have you seen
yep,
that? And on his, and he's seated, and on his throne you can see the it's the papyrus and the lotus flower that are intertwined with each other, that shows like the
mhm,
tying of Upper and Lower Egypt. Um, all of those statues as impressive as the statue is, all of the hieroglyphs that I saw that are carved onto the like the footstool, it's just like
It's like
it's like I did it, you know. I mean, seriously, and and it's sitting right next to the depiction of the tying of the flowers of Upper and Lower Egypt that are
mhm.
masterfully done. Um, it just really, really odd. And so supposedly the story goes is, let me see if I can show the photo of the Sphinx temple. So, or I'm sorry, at the Valley Temple. So here's me. Oh, here we go. So here's me in the Valley Temple, leaned up against one of these gigantic Aswan granite
Amazing.
columns.
Yes, yes.
So those little niches in the floor behind me, those are carved into a white calcite floor. So what this place would have looked like in its prime is it would have been seated right on the banks of the Nile. You have these boat ramps that come straight up to you can see them when you visit it. There are these boat ramps that come out of the dirt, and
Mhm.
there's these little docks, and you would walk into this huge red granite temple. I mean, really, it's like the most impressive thing in Egypt, in my opinion. And you would
And
walk in.
it would have had a roof over it.
Oh yeah. So it would have had so you can see these notches right here in the roof. So
Mhm.
this beam right here would have come across and would have attached to another granite beam. So this right here would have ran across the top of these two columns, and then you would have other beams coming across. And I
Like
don't,
Lego.
yeah, and I don't know if they would have had something that would have filled in the space, but my hunch is that you would have had these gaps in the roof that that would have allowed sunlight to come in. And um, my guess is that when the sun was straight overhead, these
Mhm.
gaps in these granite beams would have landed right on these statues right here. And so you look
Yeah.
through all these little niches in the ground are exactly the size of those Khafre diorite statues. And there's like 30 of them in here. And
Yeah.
so the granite work in here is amazing. The calcite floor, I mean, you can only imagine that when it was polished off, however many thousands of years ago, would have
Sparkly.
just sparkled in the sunlight. And then those statues, I mean, the polish of the Khafre statues are
Yeah. Those statues,
stunning.
they're the black hardest stone diorite. They're the ones with like no hieroglyphs, I believe, and they are the ones that have the better
Mhm.
they are the most skilled
Yeah, it has to
statues
be.
of or what were like yeah, and they
Yeah.
ripped them all out, which is such a shame that they're not there because it would just let's just imagine them there. But
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
mean, imagine it in its day. The
yeah.
sun's straight overhead. It's shining. You've lit up this sparkling white floor
Mhm,
with these bright red polished walls and these black glistening statues
mhm.
lining the whole structure. I mean, it really would have been amazing. I'd love to see a recreation, a digital recreation of
Oh,
what
you
this
can.
valley temple would have looked like.
You can. If you go on, I think it's called. I have to go through my videos because I linked it
Mhm.
at one point. It's called. I think it's called like Digital Egypt, and
Yes.
somebody has recreated, and you can go and they've show you Egypt as it would be 2000 BC, and
Sure.
you can walk around this temple as it was for free
Oh
on the
wow.
online. Yeah, just Google like Valley Temple Digital Egypt 3D tour, something like that, and it will come up, and you can see it as it was. It's
Maybe that's
pretty.
something we should do together on a pod at some point. Like
Yeah,
I'll
should we
pull it up
tour it?
and
Yeah,
I'll pull it up and walk through it and talk about it.
you can
But
also crawl down every pyramid digitally as well. They've like scanned
oh
all of
cool.
them. Um, so that's something you know if you can't make it out to Egypt, don't worry, you can do it in
Oh my
VR.
gosh.
Imagine
Speaking of
getting
s-
VR. Great.
speaking of crawling down pyramids, I
Yes.
totally understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Here I'm gonna remove this real quick, and then I'm gonna go to I'll just skip ahead to when we
Yeah,
went to
for anyone
pyramid
thinking that you
architecture.
can just walk inside a pyramid and just sort of stroll in, maybe up a few steps, maybe there's a slope or two. No, you are climbing through a 3 foot by 3 foot shaft. You cannot stand up in the shaft, and they descend or ascend. I mean, in the Bent Pyramid, you're going at least 90 meters. down. It is not for the claustrophobic. It is not for the faint heart. Athletes have struggled with doing a pyramid run.
Yeah. It's I saw this comment here. Somebody left this. Symmetry, I think might mean symmetry. Symmetry of the face shows. I think he's talking about the Sphinx. Whoever repurposed it could do same work as original carvers. Well, sure. Yeah, this is super soft limestone. And there's some examples, kind of like what I was saying about. There's artifacts that we have this. Before I went, I had this like black and white view, and now it's a lot more complicated. And like I was saying, there's artifacts that seem to kind of impress me and bring up more questions than they do answers. But I definitely think that there was a point in, even if we take, the pyramids at their youngest state, 2700 BC, 4th dynasty, there's 100% a loss of the ability to do that. There's no question about that. By the time that the old kingdom falls apart, even if we're going by traditional Egyptology, they lose their ability to create so many of these monuments. And for 300 years, Egypt has completely fallen apart. In the Middle Kingdom, they try to come back together and it doesn't work. And then by the New Kingdom, when you look at early New Kingdom, the monuments are not very impressive. And as the New Kingdom ramps up, it's hard to make sense of why the quality of artifacts seems to go up and down. But there's actually a statue of Hatshepsut. Okay, so I find this really interesting. So I don't think that New Kingdom Egyptians even knew probably that those granite vases, those hardstone vases ever existed. You look at the archaeological evidence of them, we do not find them in any tombs at all after 2100 BC. There were people, and what that means is that there were people in 2100 BC burying themselves with them, and we never see them again. So you can imagine that they're kind of off the market after that. They don't really exist.
And do you know the oldest graves they found them in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, graves going back really far, right?
Yeah, there's at least 7000 BC, and Ben from Uncharted X said he saw in a museum, he saw a label because they dug up an old grave, and it was like 10,000 BC. It was like 12,000 years old, and in the contents of the grave, there was a Nubian grave, and it was 10,000 BC, 12,000 years old, and there was these stone cut vases. So they literally go from not even just like on the cusp of dynastic, thousands of years before, and then they're in the first couple of dynasties, and then just nothing. And recently, I got to go on a trip. I was helping with the scanning project. We got the Petrie Museum in London allowed a small little team to go in and scan as many of their pre-dynastic vases as possible. And then for fairness and comparison, we found some New Kingdom vases that were cut, alabaster vases, and they scanned those for comparison to be like, okay, well, if it's the same skill set of, if you can cut one in one, and it was almost a joke. We and in fairness as well, we took the most precise looking alabaster Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom vases, and they looked like they'd been made of Play-Doh in comparison to the old pre-dynastic granite ones. They melted a little bit or wonky, and it was like, okay, it's not the same. They were trying to replicate the old ones, but nobody knew how to do it in granite or diorite or basalt.
I totally agree with that. What I did find was interesting is, so this statue here is supposedly attributed to Hatshepsut, like great female pharaoh of New Kingdom. But what I thought was interesting is here's kind of the nuances is I think there's no doubt that people later on were even after New Kingdom, or let's say after, after Old Kingdom, after Valley Temple is built, whenever exactly the Valley Temple actually is constructed, there's no doubt that later on people are making statues out of hard stone. If they're making them just as, just in the same quality, that's up to a lot of debate. What I thought was interesting is that this statue here is dated to, I want to say 14th century BC. And look what she's holding in her hand. It's those, but they're made out of granite on this statue. And that's what I was saying. That's red Aswan granite, and they're vases, but they didn't know. I feel strongly about the fact that when these were made, she or whoever made them probably didn't know that there were actually vases made thousands of years before in these hard stones. But I got as good of a photo as I can, and some photos online, and these aren't hollowed out on the inside. There's just like a little crevice at the top where you leave like an offering or something like that.
Yeah, because it's the inside that also makes them so amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought this was fascinating that later on in Egypt, people made granite vases, but they're not actual vases. They're just on a statue. It's probably interesting. They probably didn't know that these actually did exist at one point through this hard stone. It'd be interesting if you could speak to that stonemason and be like, okay, you made the image of a red granite vase. Can you actually make one though? And they'd probably be like, no.
Yeah, no, we can just do that's, and the polish that is on that statue, that's insane, because nobody knows, no stonemason has any idea how they got that polish or they achieved that polish. That is really a lost art, and it only appears in some bits of Egypt.
It's really amazing. What I was going to say, man, I think I have it in this collection somewhere. So, okay, here's some of the, so at the new museum, here's some of the vases that are there. So here's me in Alexandria. These were really amazing statues. Here's a huge once upon a time granite statue that was in Alexandria. Alexandria, there's, so what I was saying is that there's no doubt that later on they were making statues out of hard stone. What solidified that for me, because I'd always wondered, is this something that we, really only attribute to, it was just hard for me to wrap my head around it before I'd actually gone. And then when I went to the Ptolemaic Greco-Roman Museum, turns out Alexander the Great had statues of his own face commissioned in granite. And so that kind of locks in that, like, okay, at a certain point, they are doing this again. People are, at some point, all of this comes back. And so, in Alexandria, they're erecting these huge granite statues. Unfortunately, this one had probably been laying in the water for 2,000 years. And
because that looks very eroded for granite.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's weird too, right? So it definitely is granite. I saw it up close, and you can't erect a statue this large out of anything but granite. Because when you try to lift it, it'll break.
It'll snap, yeah.
And then in the bay here, these are all so eroded. So all this is concrete, but actually underneath all of this in the bay are these huge megalithic stones that were used in the lighthouse of Alexandria. Whoa. So my idea that I'm working on right now is, I think that, so you have the pyramids, right? The pyramids are built at whatever time they're built at. It falls off no matter what, even if you go by traditional Egyptology. I have a book written by Zahi Hawass here on the floor. And in that book, at the end of the Old Kingdom, the technology and the prowess of architecture falls off at the end of the Old Kingdom, no matter what way you look at it. It doesn't come back in the Middle Kingdom. And there's some impressive statues, really impressive stuff that's attributed to the New Kingdom, but no monuments anywhere near the scale of the Old Kingdom. And then you have the Persians come, or the Nubians come, and then the Persians come, and Egypt just falls off. Well, when the Greeks take over Egypt, these guys really, really care about knowledge and preserving knowledge. They build the Library of Alexandria, and although there were no Ptolemies, that actually took the time to learn Egyptian or assimilate to the Egyptian religion, I think that they re-engineered, because at this time there are people who can read hieroglyphs, but it's less and less. And because the Greeks get introduced into Egyptian society, they change the way that hieroglyphics are written. And that's why Greek hieroglyphs are still being deciphered today. Or I should say Greek Egyptian hieroglyphs are still being deciphered today. The only thing that we can actually read from ancient Egypt is the Middle Kingdom. Or I should say the only thing that we can read fluently without having to reinterpret things, like the Edfu text, those are still being deciphered. And that's all Greek. So anywho, I think that the Greeks in Egypt, using the knowledge that was still around in Egypt, reverse engineer, or I guess reteach themselves how to build these huge monuments. Because the lighthouse, we know exactly when that thing was built. There was no city in Alexandria before Alexander was there. Like, we have written documentation of how that city's founded. And that lighthouse was the base of it is built entirely out of 65-ton red Aswan granite stones. And it was built to be exactly the same height as the Great Pyramid. And so what I think that the Ptolemies, these new Greek pharaohs, are doing is to unite the Egyptians. They're hearkening back to the beginning of Egyptian civilization and basically showing the Egyptians that we can return back to this. And so it's really interesting in Alexandria, even though the whole city is destroyed and all of it's gone today. I was there for 2.5 days, and there's just nothing left of ancient Alexandria. But from what we know, and the blocks that are sitting in the bay, they learned how to rebuild the things that were being built, that are attributed to the fourth dynasty. So anyways, really, really interesting stuff. So that technology did come back one day, but unfortunately, because Alexandria was the center of the ancient world, the city was just paved over and destroyed like a dozen times over. So there's nothing left of the city anymore. So anyways, really interesting stuff.
Damn.
So going back to crawling through pyramids.
The first pyramid I ever went in.
Was it really?
Favorite pyramid is the bent one. Yeah.
Really? Really?
I love the official stance. Like, the official stance on the bent pyramid is that it was a finished accident. So that they were building the pyramid and somehow got the calculations wrong and made it go at a different angle, yet they continued to make it and fully finish it, even though if it was like, if you made a genuine mistake, you would I can't believe that there are so many people, like really smart academic people, that go, yeah, that's a finished mistake. And I'm like, no, it's obviously designed.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't buy it. History for granite doesn't buy it either.
I don't buy it. You wouldn't continue a mistake. You don't every mistake that of in stone that we see, like cut mistakes, it's stopped and retracted, and then they either discard the box, which is why you have unfinished mistakes all over the stuff. You wouldn't spend the next 20 years or however long it took to make these things by going, well, it's on the wonk, but maybe people won't notice. Like, no, it all is perfect precision. You've got the outer casings as well, not just the inside. It's all for a reason. They're doing it.
And the if that were the case, it's really interesting that the bent pyramid, so the idea for everybody watching is that Senefru, who is is he the first pharaoh of the fourth dynasty? He's one of them. He's one of the first pharaohs of the fourth dynasty. Father of Khufu, who is, attributed to be the pharaoh that commissioned the Great Pyramid. So the idea is that Senefru wants to build on top, or wants to build on the idea that the pharaoh Zoster and his architect Imhotep created in Saqqara with the step pyramid. Step pyramid's made out of modestly sized limestone stones, but is still huge, and the chambers inside of it are really impressive. But basically what he wanted to do was flatten off all the sides and make it a true pyramid. And so they try to do that in my Doom. And they basically build this tower that's in the center of the pyramid where the now I'm just giving the traditional explanation here, but there's basically this tower on the inside of the My Doom pyramid and the Bent pyramid, where you walk inside and it's just this huge, almost like this building inside of a pyramid, where you know what I'm talking about, where you come up the staircase, and if the rafters weren't there, the staircase wasn't there, you would look up and there'd be a square.
It would just be an empty inside of a egg.
Yeah. And so anyways, they tried to do that at My Doom, and supposedly the exterior stones are not interlocked with the interior, so the whole exterior goes and it just falls to the side, and it's doesn't work. So they mess up there, and then Senefru, I don't know how he has this much time to do this in his life, because if it takes 20 years per pyramid, I mean that's like 60 years, just.
Well, it's not that it takes 20 years. It's they only have 20 years in the historical record for it to be made. Do you know what I mean? Like because there's.
Okay.
So
Sure.
They're saying like there was only 20 years between the kings and their sons. So if one king commissioned and finished and built a pyramid, they only have 20-year time frames. But that 20 years, it would mean that you'd have to precisely lay every block one every 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
To fit the 20-year time frame.
Yeah, so it's
some slight reverse engineering of history there, I think.
Yeah.
Make it fit.
So he fails at My Doom, and they try again at Dashur. They move north to Dashur, and they start commissioning this pyramid. And supposedly, you can see the angle at the bottom is pretty steep. And you can see how much more the pyramid, or how much taller it would have been. And supposedly it's not architecturally sound, and yet they build the rest of the pyramid. I mean, they build the other 50% of the pyramid after that. And laying the top of the pyramid is arguably has to be more complicated than the bottom, because you're the outer casing stones, the angles of them are flat, and then they start angling up. Do you remember that standing at the bottom? The pyramid, the casing stones, you start sliding them in at a 45-degree angle as you get higher up. I mean, just mind-boggling that anybody could do this in general.
When you walk up to the Bent Pyramid, because it's out there near Saqqara, and there's just nothing, you see nothing. Whereas Giza, I mean, the Giza Plateau, you turn around and you see Cairo City. And so it's very much like, but out here you are out in it felt like I was in Dune, But when you approach the Bent Pyramid, I just felt like I was in what's that film with Blade Runner? It felt very Blade Runner-y. I was like, it's like a mix. If Blade Runner and Dune had a baby, it's the Bent Pyramid.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect comment. Is why is it the official statement that it wasn't structurally sound and they abandoned it, but it's a tourist destination today? You pay the Egyptian government officially millions of people a year pay to walk all up and down inside that pyramid, and it's as sound today as it was 5,000 years.
It says it was a mistake and they got it wrong. It's this mistake has held up longer than all of the mud brick pyramids that the later dynasties attempted to make. This one it's standed the test of time. It's part of the original batch of pyramids, and they didn't do anything wrong. Every pyramid the maths that is involved and the architecture is like, we couldn't do it today. The intricate tunnels and shafts inside that match the outside, that match the casing stones. It's insane.
So I don't buy that this was a mistake. And I don't.
Bent Pyramid, you have to access halfway up the pyramid. So to even get in the shaft that you have to crawl inside, you have to climb up a wooden. They've made wooden steps today, but you go up outside halfway through even to enter.
Yeah. Okay. So going through the pyramid. Wow. Going down into the Bent Pyramid is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like a hunt. Okay. So you're looking at the pyramid right here. It looks there's no way, if you haven't been there, now that I'm looking at this photo, I understand how big this thing is. If I was standing at the bottom, there's absolutely no way you could possibly see me standing next to it. I would be that small.
No, you're an
and
ant.
the entrance to the pyramid is somewhere about right here.
Yeah.
And to go down the staircase, you actually go underneath the pyramid. This right here is a good 100 yards, I would say.
Oh yeah.
What would 100 yards be in meters? I don't know.
I think it's 90 meters. I think that's what it is. But let's have a look. No, I mean, like, I think the descent is 90 meters, but 100 yards in meters. Let's Google this. Is 91. There we go. 91 meters.
Nice job. So yeah, it's 90 meters, 100 yards, and you go underneath the pyramid. It's a long, long way to be going down a shaft where, I mean, honestly, you are crouched really, really low the entire way down.
By 3 foot. It is not built for humans. I saw somebody in the comments say, was there any like notches or steps or anything? Yeah. No, this is smooth limestone, completely smooth shaft, and it is not designed. Today they've added like kind of wooden slats so that you can grip something and climb something, and I think there's a handrail. But back in the day, it would be if you slip down that shaft, you are going 90 meters down into the ground. And at the bottom as well, I didn't know this until I watched Land of Chem's channel, but they've boarded across the bottom. But at the bottom of these entrance shafts, there is like collection tanks at the bottom, which he was saying that's why he thinks that the shafts were for putting water, like water shafts to put in there, or chemical shafts or whatever. But they were not for they're not human shafts, and they're definitely not entry and exits. They are like a one-way pouring into, and then you would collect at the bottom these deep pits that would then fill up. There's a purpose for why they're there, but they're completely covered. You wouldn't even know they're there. They're not pointed out. I've been 3 times, nobody pointed them out. It was only Land of Chem that told us that.
Yeah, there was so much that he pointed out to me, and honestly, there's no way I could do him justice trying to there was a you ever spoke to Dan the debunker before? Are you familiar with him?
Yes. He's at Cosmic.
Yeah, he's okay. So he's coming. I forgot. Yeah, he's in our group chat. So somebody asked him to debunk Land of Chem, and debunker, he's like, yeah, you know, I would be up for that, but I couldn't even begin to learn, or I couldn't even begin to approach the topic to learn as much as he does about it to debunk him. It's that elaborate and it's that well thought out that I would be very surprised if somebody could easily debunk him, because the things he was saying to me sure made a hell of a lot of sense, you know, and I'm like as slow to approaching things as it gets. I
think that I don't think that everything we don't match on every single point of his theory, but I super respect his ability to look at things, like I say, upside down, inside out, from a different angle. And there are certain things that, again, I'd been inside these structures and I hadn't noticed. There is one of the pyramids in Saqqara, 4th dynasty, where it's got a vaulted ceiling, as in the style of 4th dynasty, but you wouldn't know unless you crawled right up. But the vaulted ceiling has like a kind of trough, like a kind of pig trough channel all the way around. And he was like, well, that makes so much sense. If you're collecting something that's going to run off, and then you want to collect it in a trough, and then you're gonna move that, whatever you're collecting, from the ceiling. And I was like, that's interesting, because like, why else? It's not like a feature, because you can't see it. It's a pointless feature to have if it wasn't functional. So there's lots of things he points out that it kind of is open to having a function, more than like a design or a spiritual thing.
One of the things that we were joking about was I was thinking about you when I was going down this pyramid, by the way, and what you were telling me about how it would feel so disrespectful dragging a pharaoh's body down through this thing. And I was joking with Jeff, and I was saying, I was like, you know what? I honestly would understand if they built this whole thing and they opened up the hatch and they just went, just chunked his body down there.
Down the hatch.
How are you gonna? How would you even get his body down this 90 meters? And then when you get in there, it's just a straight up, what is it,
You
40
have
something feet above you.
you
There's
have to
that
go up.
little hole there, and you have to go up through there. Then you reach that other chamber, the east-west passage, and then you go up to the supposed burial
Yeah.
chamber where there was no sarcophagus.
Yeah, and also today, so this is the thing that really pisses you off, is that you spent all that time trying to survive
Mhm.
going down 90 meters, and then you get there and realize you got to go right back up again. I'm
Yep.
like, why are you not just coming in straight? If we just come in
Yeah.
straight, why do we have to go down to go up? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
If you were doing a processional burial, you
Sure.
just come in straight. But
Yeah. Yeah.
then you have to go up.
I totally believe that it's a place that people are not meant to be in.
Humans
It
humans are not
Yeah.
supposed to be going in and out of these things.
Yeah, yeah, they're not. It's just there's nothing about it that that would indicate in any of the pyramids. And I really took some time while I was there. Um, I really took some time while I was there to think about it, and I got that book, Giza and the Pyramids by Zahi Hawass, just to
Mhm.
have the information. And I went through it, and I went through it, and I was thinking, is there any way? And you look at almost all the pyramids, there is a slot where there is a door jamb that was meant to fall in place to keep people out. It's not a place that people were supposed to be inside of. And I mean, I guess, I mean, that does support the tomb idea, but it could support, Jeff's idea just as
I
well.
mean,
Um,
yeah, there's loads
but
of. I was under the impression as well, just for the Great Pyramid, that
Mhm.
the King's Chamber, there's a really complicated portcullis with
Oh
weighted
yeah, yeah,
things,
yeah, yeah.
and I was under the idea that it was a once down lock job, as in once it's shut, you cannot open it again.
Mhm.
But it turns out, after like lots of studies on it, that it's actually a working lockable door. So
Really?
it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
not it's not for it's not like a kind of portcullis. It's not like a trap door that shuts and locks
Sure.
um after you've removed the body for whatever, and then just like it. No, it's a lockable. It's a door that you can lock, and
Yeah.
only somebody who knew how to counterweight or whatever
Mhm.
could use it. So it's keys to the castle, literally.
I,
Um,
I one of the guys I was with, he was an expert on ancient Rome, and I was talking to him about the pyramids, and I was like, we were just going through all the mysteries of them, and I was saying, and he's a guy that's hyper conservative historian. He's got a PhD. He doesn't really speculate, and I was kind of poking at him. I was like, there's really some strange things with these pyramids.
mhm.
That I was like, that the sarcophagus inside the Great Pyramid is far inferior to sarcophagi that were from the third dynasty.
Mhm.
And the fact that there's no hieroglyphs whatsoever. When he and we visited a fourth dynasty tomb at Giza, walked around on the inside, and there's carvings and depictions of Egypt all over it, hieroglyphs, everywhere. And I was like, but it is weird, right? You have the
It's
most
so
powerful man in the
weird.
world, and he doesn't do anything like that at all. And they're capable, supposedly, they are capable of putting hieroglyphs in granite. I mean, they don't do it that well, but they do it, and you don't see it anywhere inside the pyramid. Why is that? You don't see it inside Khufu's pyramid, Khafre's pyramid. You don't see it inside Menkare's pyramid. You don't see it inside the Red Pyramid, and you don't see it inside the Bent Pyramid. Why is that? Why is it that there's not a sarcophagus inside the Bent Pyramid? And supposedly the first studies of the first excavations and explorations of the Red Pyramid, even though they destroyed, when you go in that back chamber and they've ripped out the whole floor, uh,
Mhm.
they ripped out that entire floor because they never found a burial chamber. So there was no sarcophagus
Yeah.
anywhere in the Red Pyramid, and that's his final resting place. There's a
Um,
there's
Did
a lot.
you notice that you went into, like, there are a lot of bats in the Bent Pyramid. There's a lot of bats
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in I think Menkara. There's a lot of bats in certain pyramids. But did you notice how much the Red Pyramid stinks
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
of what's the ammonia?
Ammonia, yeah.
Because initially I went in and I went, oh my God, it smells like pee, which is
Mhm.
true because a lot of the guards in Egypt do pee everywhere because they're guarding this place out in the desert and they
Sure.
just pee on the ancient site. It's disgusting. So, but it wasn't pee because it was a difference because Temple of Dendera stank of human piss. This stank of ammonia. But then I was like, is that piss or is that bleach? Because I bleached my hair a lot. I know the smell of like chemical ammonia, and I was like, oh, the whole bent pyramid just whiffs of ammonia in a way that the other pyramids that have bats peeing in there all the because people palm it off and go, oh, because of the bats, that's why it smells. And I was like, but it's like coming out of the walls, deep ammonia smell, not just where the bats are peeing and resting at the very, very top.
Yeah.
And then why are the
really
other pyramids not stinking of piss too? I don't feel like it's all the bats. So there's a weird smell in the Red Pyramid.
Another thing that's strange that Jeff showed me was when you're in the pyramid. I was skeptical of this at first because I just didn't know. I didn't have any reference to what he was talking about. When we were in the first chamber of the Red Pyramid, you go down, you hit that first chamber, and then you know there's another chamber behind that, and you take the stairs up and go to the final chamber. So we're in that first chamber, and he's showing me where he thinks that there was liquid coming down into that first chamber. And he was showing me, look on the wall. So it's about 2 to 3 feet high. It's got this little wave pattern.
Oh, there's like a liquid pattern. Yeah.
And it's this liquid wave pattern that goes around this chamber. And I got it all on video. He was explaining it to me. And it's, the part of the wall that wouldn't have been impacted by the liquid is just red granite. And then the part of the wall that would have is like stained dark black. And I was skeptical of it. I didn't know what to think of it at first, but I was videoing it. Sure enough, I go to Philae Temple much later, and Philae Temple was flooded before they completely rebuilt the whole thing. And sure enough, there's a flooding pattern of, now this is Nile River water hitting it, where they've cleaned all this off, but right here, all this black is still remaining. It was exactly the same thing as what Jeff was showing me in the Red Pyramid. And he said that they recreated a model of it, just a miniature model, and they flooded it with water, to as close as they could get to the correct proportions. And they said that wave pattern of the water moving around it as it's flowing in was pretty similar in their miniature model. And so, I kind of have the same approach as debunking. I don't know anywhere near enough about what Jeff is hypothesizing to even begin to approach it. He's committed the last 2 years plus of his life to studying this very niche idea. And the things that he shows me, sure enough, I travel to the other side of Egypt and I see, liquid
water damage on
water
limestone.
marking. Yeah. And so, sorry, I'm going to get this one more point out. So we're in the next chamber, and his idea was that, okay, this was filled completely up with water at some point to, I don't know, have a concentrated gas up at the top. And so I'm looking up at the top, and he was like the corbelled roof acted as a measurement of some kind. And so for people who are listening, corbelled roofing, the idea is that at this point in the ancient world, they're not making arches in the same way that we understand arches today. What they're doing instead is you have a wall right here, and the way to make an arched roof was you take these lintel blocks and you slide them over the wall a little bit, and you put another block on top of it and slide that one out, put another block on top of it and slide it out. And it makes this roof like this. And he was showing me on the corbelling that at certain levels, from the top up, that whole level will be completely stained black, and it'll end right at the corbelling where it goes from one level down to the other, and that lower level all the way down to the floor will be completely clean. And he was going through it and explaining it to me, and I was like, that is certainly really strange.
That's really odd.
The staining of the corbelling ends at the bottom of the corbelling. Very, very odd. So it was really compelling and kind of mind blowing. It's so strange that, this one guy can have this one out there theory, but he's a very smart guy and has dedicated so much of his life to studying it. And what he shows me, I can't disprove it. It's very compelling. So anyways, that was my experience at Dashur.
Yeah.
So
No.
Did you go to the Bent Pyramids Valley Temple?
Did we go around the back? I
So
think so.
So there's a mortuary temple
On the
I
west?
believe.
No.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
is it
west would be the other side.
okay?
So there's a mortuary temple on the east side. I say mortuary, but
It's very tiny. Have you got a picture? I'm gonna refresh my memory.
yeah, it's I don't have a picture in this slide because it's really
Oh.
not much. It's really not much. It's two big blocks with two stela next to it with a little roof over it.
Yep.
But if you walk way out, maybe, I don't know, half a mile away, you can hit this, you go to his valley temple. And it's supposed to be off guard because it's close to the military, or it's supposed to be off limits because it's close to the military installation. And so I paid like an exorbitant amount of money to a guard. It wasn't a guard, it was a military officer to go. They would kill me if they knew I said that. Because they asked me like 1 billion times to never say that I went here. But there's very, very few photos. Surprisingly, I haven't even seen Ben actually go out here. I would have thought I searched his whole channel.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
Out here. I didn't find anything granite. It was all limestone, like how the Bent Pyramid is all limestone. I was looking for granite inside, but there's no granite that I can see. But it was all limestone, but just these huge megalithic stones with no mortar. You can obviously see that they're perfectly cut, sitting alongside each other. Sure enough, just like inside the Bent Pyramid, no hieroglyphs at all. Whoops. No hieroglyphs, no inscriptions, no nothing. Just huge, gigantic stones that line and fill in this huge temple that would have sit where the Nile comes up close. Because right here I'm standing. This is the middle of the desert. But the if I were to turn around, if you're looking here, or where I was standing when I took this photo, if I were to turn around, equal distance from me would have been that valley temple, and on the other side of that valley temple would be where the Nile runs. And so just this huge temple here, no inscriptions, no hieroglyphs, nothing. It's just really, really strange. And the Red Pyramid doesn't have this. It has no valley temple down where the Nile would have been. So there is a lot that doesn't make sense with Fourth Dynasty monuments. But I'm sorry, you were about to say something.
Well, I've just been shocked into silence by this little temple box. This is reminding me of, there is a weird, obscure little, they call it a temple, but they really have no idea what it is. And it's one of the oldest on the carbon dating of all of everything in Giza. It's one of the oldest things that come up. And it's far out away from everything else. There's like a weird little massive megalithic precision temple. I'm forgetting the name of it now.
Yeah, have Ben and the Snakes gone out there?
I think Ben's been there. I know that Annie XT went there recently. It's a very interesting little piece because it's a lot older than everything that was around Giza, but yet it uses all of the same stone techniques. So I think it carbon dated to like 3000 BC. So it's hundreds of years, like, academically older, yet using identical, it's super old, and it's really far out in the desert. I've not been there because you have to really go out of your way and get a private car to go right the way out. But I'm thinking, if that's over there in the desert, imagine that extrapolated another 50, 100 miles. There must be more.
It has to be.
I'm gonna find images of it and I'll text it to you later. But this is just reminding me of that, like this random little small. It's about this size, just like precision kind of structure that you're like, well, what is it for? Very.
I will say, I've got more photos that are on my camera that'll come out in videos.
Yeah.
I did find some artwork here, but all it was was that sort of hieratic style drawing with the red paint. You've seen this before, where
Yep, yep, yep.
you can see it all around Egypt. I saw one that depicted a little boat, like a little river boat, but it looked like some kid 2,000 years later walked out here for fun and they graffitied on it and just drew something.
Yeah.
So it was this little boat, and it was a naos box. The boxes we were talking about earlier, one of those was drawn on one of the pillars here, and that's it. There's nothing, and probably there was a German dude that I was with. He and I walked out here, and he and I were both like, this had to be just somebody coming by later on and just scribbling something on the blocks.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very strange. So next thing I did. Sorry,
Yeah,
keep going.
Sorry. No, I just saw someone from that. I'm going to jump into the comments because I saw someone saying carbon dating isn't accurate. Don't trust it. Yeah, obviously, carbon dating isn't an accurate thing. It's a good rule of thumb for human activity, and you can go, at least there was human activity to this date. It's interesting. If you look at in the 80s and the 90s, there were two different studies that tried to carbon date all of the areas around Giza. And I think at the time they were trying to prove that the pyramids could be like 12,000 years old. And they were looking for human activity to support that. What they found in the organic matter that was in and around all of the sites of Giza, and when they correlated it on a graph, what they found was that all of the carbon dates were coming out on average around 350 years older than Khufu, Sneferu, everything like that. So we're like, there was, okay, so we've got the timeline wrong according to if you're going to go with the carbon dating, you have to push everything back a couple hundred years. And what was also interesting is that the carbon dating was coming out from all of the sites, the Bent Pyramid, the Giza Plateau. They weren't coming out one after the other, as in like this one was made first and then this one. They were all coming out at around the same time. So they were 350 years back in time, but also on an average on this graph around the same time, which to me would show something very interesting. I think that is proving that there was, or pointing to that there was a big restoration project going on around that time, around the first, second, third, fourth dynasties, that there was a huge, like a kind of industrial revolution, like a rebuilding, a renaissance of all these old sites. And I think that's what we're able to carbon date. Limestone repairs to structures, maybe they put granite cladding on things like the Valley Temple, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I agree with you, Jose Otaco, that carbon dating isn't accurate, but it does show some really interesting food for thought. And we go, okay, so the carbon dating doesn't support the historical narrative. It pushes it way back, and it also shows this weird thing that it was they were all being built around the same time, which also is different to the historical narrative. So yeah, there we are. More questions.
Yeah, well, and it seems like I think it's kind of what more questions is exactly right. I thought it was going to be more black and white. It just seems like there's so many more questions than I have more questions now than I have answers.
Yeah, right. You go there to research, and then you come back going, "What a minute! I've got a notebook full of questions."
Oh man, yeah, it's amazing. I think that I sort of find myself agreeing with Graham Hancock where he's at lately, where he's saying that he thinks now a lot more sites in Old Kingdom must be dynastic, but that at so many of these sites they are seeded by pre-dynastic structures, like at Karnak. I have something here at Karnak. That right there, I think this is one of the things you were speaking to me about, was that you can see where older columns from an unknown date are sitting underneath the temple. It's like everything in Egypt is built on top of something that has been there much longer, and the carbon dating shows that the structure on top is actually at least 3 centuries older than we think that it is. So I think another element to this is that throughout dynastic Egypt, these 3,000 years, you're looking at propaganda on a completely different level. Think about a government that is controlled by one man and he has absolute supreme control. He's not a king. He's not an emperor. He is a god. He is the living embodiment of God. And he can do whatever he wants. So you can just wipe history away and, completely alter it. So you got to think, let's say the Great Pyramids are 3,000 or 3 centuries older than their minimum date is 2650, 2560 BC. Let's say Khufu's pyramid. Let's say it's actually 3 centuries older. I don't. First off, the evidence linking the Khufu pyramid actually to Khufu is super. It's very weak.
It would be thrown out in a court of law today if you
Sure.
tried to argue it in a court of law. The evidence is so small that it wouldn't meet the threshold for a court.
So you think about all the information. It funnels through every generation. It funnels through one man, and sometimes a woman. But it funnels through this one person. Think about how much of history is probably completely wrong. My professor, Ed Barnhart, he always tells me, we were at the in March, we were at the Mexico City's archaeological museum, and he was talking to me about how Maya religion seems so dark, and it seems like there's no like love in it. There's nothing bright and happy about it. And he's like, but again, that's probably just our viewpoint of it. They would probably laugh at us at how wrong we are about everything we think about them. And I thought that so much while I was in Egypt. Just, we attribute this to Khufu, but really it could just be that, Khufu claimed it and is very lucky that Ramses wasn't successful in taking the claim from him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would just imagine that, like I was saying, even if we're confined to the 3100 BC date, I bet you so much of it is wrong. It's just impossible for it to not be. It's sitting so far back in remote history with such little evidence. I mean, we know that Khufu did exist, but like, there's not that much evidence that he did exist. There's less evidence that he existed than there is Jesus. We don't have that much. It's undeniable that Jesus Christ existed, but again, there's not much archaeological evidence behind his existence, and even less so with Khufu. So, anyways,
Karnak is, I think, one of my favorite temple complex. I think it's my favorite temple complex. It is when I say an onion, it just so many layers, and they're also kind of they are like comically attached to each other. You've got columns and then a new column, and then you've got a statue that's been drawn on, and then you've got it's like they were literally just adding and adding and adding and adding. And you wouldn't even notice these bottom of these old plinth, these old granite pillar plinth holes. You wouldn't notice them because you're so busy looking around, looking at all of the amazing intricate limestone New Kingdom stuff that's there. Sure. And you're looking around, and then a lot of them are behind where the obelisk, the big granite obelisks were. And then behind that, there's like the old plinth where there would have been a big granite pillar. And I'm like, what site was here before this all became like, and it's just huge. Then there's in the center of it though, there's like it's limestone kind of everywhere apart from the remnant of the old granite plinths, the granite obelisks, and then inside there's like a granite temple that's very megalithic, very valley temple. Did you find it in the center? And it's like the granite is so worn and so old that it's almost like glassy, shiny. It's so old.
Maybe I saw it, but there's so much.
You haven't been inside it? Okay,
no.
It's a big, and I feel like that's the oldest part of the site that's still up. It's very old, and you go in there, and it's like
okay. Describe it one more time.
So you're walking down Karnak, and you've got the obelisks, and you've got the big it's part when you pass all of the temple area with the big pillars that have like
okay, you're at the cross where the 4 obelisks would have been, and there's like
and you've got the big obelisks there, and then if you go straight, there is like a center point in the middle of that avenue, and if you just keep going straight, and there is a small it's kind of a small Valley Temple style, but it's made. It's the only place really where you find granite blocks.
Is it?
Everywhere else,
Are they like black granite or something?
they're like dark granite, and
Yeah.
they're really old. And you can go in, and then inside there is a granite box that isn't hollow. So it's really weird. It's not
Really?
it's not a
Oh, I
sarcophagus.
didn't get to go in. You know what? You're so right. I know what you're talking about, but I
You didn't
couldn't
get to
get
go
in
in?
it. I couldn't get in it. I was standing on the outside, so you know where. So you're walking through that main gallery where all the Amun pillars are at, and you walk through it, and then you get to that cross section where all the
Mhm.
obelisks are at. And I walked left, and I went around, and I could see over one of the walls there was a chamber that was lined with dark, hard stone.
Dark granite, yeah, and it feels super old. It's got the most amazing resonance inside, and there is a
Yeah,
a
I gotta
big
go back.
like granite box in the middle that's been touched for thousands of years, so it's the most shiny, smooth. But someone at some point tried to smash what they thought was the lid off, so a quarter of the top is missing. But when they smashed it off, they realized that it was a fake box. There was nothing inside it. There was no. It's not like the boxes in Saqqara where it was, and they go, "Oh, it was a tomb sarcophagi." So it's a granite box that's got no inside, but it had a fake lid. It was really interesting, and
I can't believe I didn't see this. I walked right by this.
well. That's why you got to go back
Yeah.
to Egypt multiple times, because you have a different experience every single time.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is right near the old megalithic granite structure temple thing that's at the very heart of it. If you run around the side, that's where you find the granite stargates. And there's one that is kind of out of bounds, but with a flimsy little rope. So you just sort of hop over it. And that's the granite stargate that's disintegrating from the inside out, which is like a weird phenomenon.
What? I never saw this.
I've got it. Okay, when one day when we go to Egypt, and I'll whiz you around. I know like 3 cool things in Karnak temple, and I'll take you to the Stargate. I'll take you to the weird old temple.
Wow,
But the Stargate is insane. It's crumbling. It looks like it's marshmallowing from the inside out, and granite doesn't do this.
Sure.
And you can pick up handfuls of it on the floor, and it's just disintegrating. And we had a geologist on the group, and she was like, granite shouldn't do this, like even under heat or anything like that. It shouldn't do. It's the Stargate, this like granite Stargate was cracked. It's got hieroglyphs on, and it literally translates to Stargate, which is really cool.
Interesting. Wow.
And it's been damaged somehow by some source, and the granite has disintegrated. And now it's like it's off limits, because obviously it's like crumbling away. But you can still go up and see it and have a look at it. And
this is news to me. I can't wait to go back and see this now. I had no idea. And another thing that should be said is these temples, they are so dense and there's so much going on in them that you can miss something like that. Something really important will have no sign to it. I mean, just this guy right here. This base where this column would have once stood, you can see how it's just, being suffocated under everything else that's around it. Yep. This is evidence that an entirely different building was here once upon a time.
Yeah. And it would have been huge. Look at the size of that pillar. That pillar would have gone right up. There was a big old building, granite old building.
You know what else? Site. What else is interesting is right here. You might remember this, but it's just I'm surprised I noticed it. There's so much to see. You walk up the steps and up this way to the right wall, I guess the wall that would be to my back taking this photo. There's one of those Khafre statues is standing there.
Wow.
I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what it's doing at Karnak, but the top half of it is basically broken off. And so it's just his lower chest and the rest down. But just one of those Khafre statues from the Valley Temple all the way up in Giza is just kind of in this strange corner at Karnak.
Move down here.
It's really weird, So I saw the bent pyramid, went through that. Yep. I also snuck into the Western Passage. And when you make it all the way up the tower that's inside, and you crawl through you crawl through those little passageways, and then you get to the east-west corridor, and you look at the west, and it's gated off. There's that rusted grate there. So we pulled that back and crawled through, and I ripped my favorite pants doing this. And
well, it was a sacrifice you had to make for the greater good. Thank you.
Yeah. And so anyways, we crawled all the way up this, and you can't tell because so much in Egypt is an optical illusion. So this right here gets really, really steep going up. I'm already at a steep angle, and this is almost straight up. Now this exits from almost at the top of the, or I shouldn't say the top, but where the angle changes on the bent pyramid. This exits about right here on the opposite side.
And it just goes open air.
It's just open air.
In the bent pyramid, there's a beautiful draft because air circulates around with the shafts, right?
It's through here. And I tried to crawl to the top, but I didn't want to put my weight on this rope to pull myself up. There's this board that hangs out there, and I didn't want to get caught for being in there. So I made it up to about right here. And then I knew that if I tried to go any further, when I came back down, I was going to slide all the way down this passageway. And it's so eroded, I'm guessing, because it gets rained in periodically, and it's so eroded. It's like a smooth
or it was a water shaft originally.
There's that. But I turned around, and my German friend was there, and I was like, and I was pinned up against all edges of the shaft, and I was like this. And I was telling him, I look down, and I go, if I go any further, I'm going to slide all the way down this. And I was like, we can't go up any further. So anyways,
because humans are not supposed to, they're not for humans, these shafts. It's just, they are so unfunctional for entrances.
No.
Always.
I can't imagine. I don't know what the functional purpose is for this thing. And when you're crawling around in the bent pyramid, and then you make it to what is attributed to be the burial chamber, why is there no sarcophagus in it? You know, why did they go through all the effort? If you were standing at the bottom of that chamber looking up, all the stone that had to be put on top to finish off the pyramid is truly significant. And there's no way, you know, this little shaft right here might look big, but I'm completely hunched over.
Oh, it's 3 foot.
Crawling like this through it.
I mean, why do they need so much airflow for a dead guy, right?
I don't know. I mean, the idea
sure
is,
he can breathe.
Yeah. The idea is that it's some spiritual thing, which, you know, I guess give that what it is, but
it can.
But
then why not all the pyramids? The Red Pyramid definitely doesn't have airflow like that. It's so hot and smelly.
Sure.
I've bought the 6 foot blow up inflatable human. I bought a 6 foot inflatable human, and I chickened out of doing it on my last trip to Egypt. But next time I go, I will do it, and I'm gonna inflate it before I go in the bent pyramid, and I'm just going to demonstrate for science how impractical it would be to drag a human-sized dead body.
That would be awesome.
Because I don't think it's ceremonial or distinguished or respectful.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense. I don't know, even in the bent pyramid especially. How the hell are you going to get?
Yeah. Also remember that today they've built the modern day wooden staircase that you go up like 5 floors to get to the next level. They wouldn't have had that back then. So you would have dragged this body all the way down 90 meters, and then you would have had to somehow get this dead body over your shoulder and upscale a 30-foot wall to get to the hole to the next side. So the only way you could do it would be to get ropes on some sort of pulley, and you'd have to swing the body up, smacking the pharaoh along the walls. He'd be like bouncing all the way up, and then you'd have to shove him in. Wouldn't be good. I wouldn't want to.
Well, and then so you have to get him all the way up that tower, and then get him through that passageway. It's
Weekend at Bernie's. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
It's when they have to move the dead body, and it's like it's literally Weekend at Bernie's for pharaohs.
It's Oh, I see here Jose left a comment. Maybe they used a rope system. Yeah, sure. But the problem is getting the pharaohs, say Sneffer is going to be buried in the bent pyramid. You know, it's 100 yards that you are declining down this tiny little shaft. You go down 100 yards, and then you probably go up 20 feet. You're inside this chamber that's 50 feet tall. And when you walk in there without, without the rafters and the wooden staircase that spirals up, you're in this giant tower, and you look up, and there's this square hole at the top of it that's 3 feet by 3 feet.
Like a letterbox.
And the body would have to be raised up and move through the hole, and then taken through a passageway that goes like this. It goes up and it goes up and plateaus twice. Then you get to the east-west chamber where you would go, and you would turn east or left, and you go through this passage. Then you go up the staircase, up onto the platform, and then he would be dropped down into the sarcophagus, of which the sarcophagus does not exist.
It is not that. Someone said Weekend at Pharaoh's, and that's what I'm going to call my YouTube video when I take the dead body. And we also have someone who has volunteered their dead body for a drag test. So there we are. All for science. Commend you, sir.
For science. There was a guy in the 90s that there was nobody that had been mummified like an ancient Egyptian in almost 2,000 years. I think the last person to be mummified was a Roman in up until the Christian era began in Egypt. I want to say 400 AD. So in almost 2,000 years, nobody had been mummified like an Egyptian would have. And in the 90s, they made a documentary of this guy who gave his body up for Egyptology, and they mummified him and buried him in the desert in Egypt. And there's this whole interesting documentary that you should watch. So they called it Mr. Mummy. So I don't know what we'll call this.
Okay.
But we will mummify. I got to find the body, or I got to find the guy who offered this. So Cisco, we will mummify you and then drag your dead corpse through the bent pyramid into the burial chamber and leave you there.
For comedy purposes and science.
So anyways, that was my adventures through the bent pyramid.
Amazing.
Here's some photos at Karnak, some really impressive limestone lintels. But see, they're not doing this with granite like the Valley Temple was. Huge columns. I mean, you got to give New Kingdom some credit. They're building some really impressive stuff. Here's Abu Simbel. Did you go here?
I have not been to Abu Simbel because it's so far down the river. We did our Nile cruise ended at Aswan, so that's as far low as I've gone.
Yeah, Abu Simbel was pretty cool. It wasn't my cup of tea. I mean, these are absolutely gigantic. Like, I should say I'm about this tall compared to this whole statue.
That's insane.
And it's carved into the mountainside, and we attribute it to Ramses, of course. Although he probably did build this. And basically what it is it's a message to the Nubians in the south that say, don't mess with Egypt. And it's basically like what it's supposed to be is a museum for the Nubians to basically be scared of Ramses and the Egyptians. So you got these 4 Ramses statues here, and you get to walk in. And while you walk in, you have these viziers, which are Ramses' family. But below that are these Nubians that are tied by the neck, and they're being enslaved. And when you walk in to the inside of this temple, all it is on the wall is just Ramses bragging and showing all of his conquests over the Nubians and how many Nubians he's killed and how many Nubians he's enslaved. So it's basically
Ramses sounds like a douche.
Yeah.
He wrote his name on everything. He put
Now this one I think he probably built because it's pretty sloppy. The outside here, it does look amazing, but the inside, man, I saw like I was telling you, the tombs of the nobles at Aswan. Some of those guys' tombs were more well constructed. Just these random, just this random, chief of this local town of Aswan had a nicer rock cut tomb than the inside of this rock cut museum that Ramses built for himself. It's very odd. Ramses was kind of known for building a ton of stuff, and the quality of his architecture was poor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's
I mean,
amazing is that they are replicating out of like the limestone and the bedrock. They're replicating statues that they had in full one piece granite.
yeah, absolutely.
They found like the feet and the feet and the hands of them, and they're all one piece, one cut.
Yeah.
That
So,
would have been impressive.
and I mean, I think the same size as them too.
Yeah, literally that size, exactly
Yeah,
that size, but in red granite. Could you imagine?
Oh yeah, it's
That
really
crystal
impressive.
infused, shiny red. Oh my god, you just drop to the floor if you saw it in real life.
Yeah, it is amazing. So here at Aswan as well, we departed from Aswan to go to Abu Simbel. So I paid a little money, got down inside the unfinished obelisk pit.
Great.
Wow, this is the official idea is that this was just too big. They couldn't move it in the end. But we had a geologist there with us, and he's a smart guy. He's a geologist that also works as an archaeologist, and he was convinced that there's no way that they went through all the effort of however many months it would take to do this, without knowing for
that they could do it.
That they could do it. Now, what's interesting about this and mind blowing is that all this right here, and if I were to where I was taking this photo, if I were to turn around, there's this whole granite outcropping there that what they were going to do is basically build a canal. They were not only going to cut this out of the block, because it's not like they were going to pick this up and lift it up all over everything. They would cut a channel out just like they have here. Somehow, once they somehow free it from the bottom. I mean, you can imagine how they might be able to do this, but how do you free the bottom?
How do you? Well, because what you can't see under there is that it's like for either side. If you imagine like ants are like eating away at the side of it, and then it becomes a very thin line, and then you've somehow got to I don't know, even fill it with sand to hold it up while you're chipping away, and then you have to move this thing. Also, it's unfinished because it got cracked. It's not cracked because it was finished and they tried to move it and they couldn't move it. There was a big crack all the way through them. Something happened, like catastrophically happened, but it wasn't because they were trying to move it, because they're nowhere near yet at the beginning of when they would try to, because they've still got so much more. The scoop marks go right the way underneath.
So I agree with you. They would have definitely moved this, but what's very impressive is just, this is in Aswan, 200-ish miles, 250 miles south of Luxor. And so they would have canaled out this whole granite face all the way down to the Nile. And somehow, once you free this thing from the bottom, I don't know how you get it actually through the canal down to the Nile, but then you got to transport it. And here's something I didn't know is that during most of the year, there are places along the Nile. It's not deep. You could walk across the Nile. You could just put your feet in and walk straight across the river. And there are places where it's only this deep, maybe 5 feet deep. And so you can't have something weighing down a boat like that, because it will drag the boat along it'll drag along the bottom of the river. And they have LiDAR scanned the entire Nile River, and there's no megaliths that they've ever found laying at the bottom of the river. So at no point throughout Egyptian history did they accidentally drop these huge megalithic blocks into the river and they were not able to get them back out. That's incredible.
It is the scale of this one. You're like, I don't know how they would lever it. I don't know how you would, like, if one side started to drop it, that's it. Everyone's dead. Everyone's crushed to death instantly. You can't roll it. What you would have to build construction wise to try and like even lever it. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, this one is truly mind boggling. So I saw Philae Temple, pretty amazing. This is Greek. This is Greek era, really pretty. The boat ride out there was really pretty as well. Really gave you a sense of what that ancient world would have been like. And there were some interesting things here, like hieroglyphs on the wall that discuss things that I'm interested in, like, what they were using the blue lotus flower for and what the purpose of it was. That's depicted a lot here. There's some interesting characters on the wall. Here at this temple, we see a depiction of the Emperor Nero. Actually, you see the Emperor Trajan. I think you see Alexander on one of these walls as well. So there's some interesting historical stuff.
The whole temple is supposed to, I just realized, I just clocked it. The whole temple is supposed to look like one of those boxes.
Yeah, they are everywhere. There's so many little layers like that in Egypt. What that was one of the things I was noticing is those little naos boxes. They're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
And that's why I think you're walking from the outside into this sacred space. It's a portal. It's representing a portal. Whether or not that is what they were originally, intended to represent, nobody.
Who knows? I mean, if they were replicating these boxes in the New Kingdom, but they were originally from a few thousand years before in the Old Kingdom, maybe they didn't even remember the original idea of what they were or what they were used for.
There's so this is a concept that I learned playing. Do you ever play Assassin's Creed Origins? Have you ever messed around with it? The one that takes place.
No, but I know Assassin's Creed. Yeah.
Sure. And there's a segment in the game where I forget the main character's name, but you're running around with your son and you come across a stela that's from the Old Kingdom, and when the main character is talking to his son, his son asks him, well, what did he say? And he's like, I can't read it. It's an ancient language. So, and those games are well researched. The environments are, and the historicity of it is well researched. And what it's getting at is that game takes place in 30 BC, the year that Cleopatra dies. And so this is late, the last year of ancient Egypt, basically, before Egypt becomes a part of the Roman Empire. Man. And what it's getting at is that by that time, you couldn't read Old Kingdom hieroglyphs anymore. It was a dead language. It was lost and it was gone. So you can only imagine how think about English 1,000 years ago. I mean, I'm sure you've listened to people speak Old English.
Not a chance. I have no idea what they're saying.
It is a different language. And so think about that double, how much Egyptian hieroglyphs and the language that they're speaking would change over time. So you can only imagine that the meaning of these naos boxes, these portal doorway things, probably changes over time too. I'm sure there's some things that are well preserved. The Egyptians attempted to be like the world's most conservative civilization of all time. They tried to never change things. Anytime something changed in Egypt, it was always bad. But when things did change, the degree to which it was bad is not recoverable. Your civilization can't fall apart for 4 centuries and then come back to being the way that it was. So much is going to be lost during that time. So anyways, next time you go to Egypt, just like pick a couple things to look for everywhere you go, like these naos boxes, and you'll just see them everywhere. And for me, this trip, it was the lotus flower. You see it everywhere. If we look hard enough here, we'll find it on.
It is everywhere. It is the psychedelic drug of choice of the ancient Egyptians, and you needed it to access everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was the key to the gate. Maybe if you sit in the box and you're really high on blue lotus, like the universe just.
There's got to be something there because it is so intrinsically tied to every single piece of architecture. And unfortunately, the Egyptian blue lotus is extinct. It doesn't exist anymore. So whatever that specific effect that it had on you is lost to time now. All it is a puzzle.
They have blue lotus wine.
They do. Blue lotus.
It's a different kind of blue lotus.
Yeah. It grows in Asia and it grows in Mesoamerica.
Right.
So the Maya had the blue lotus and the Japanese have it. I think there's a Japanese lotus or a Chinese blue lotus.
Because I remember Yusef Awayan said that him and his friends would go out and have blue lotus wine, and they would lie at Abu Sir on the crystal temple and just be like, whoa.
That's really cool. It's probably Asian lotus.
Probably, man.
There is only one place in Egypt where it still exists, or it did 30 years ago. There's this old documentary called "The Plant That Seduced Egypt," and in that documentary, they go to this greenhouse, and in the greenhouse, in one of their little ponds, are some of the only Egyptian blue lotus that still exist, and maybe the
Mad.
only one. It's the only known ones, and so who knows how much money they paid, but they cut one of them and took it to a laboratory, and they had the remnants of an ancient blue lotus, just the dried up, like mummified remains that had been found in the tomb, and they DNA tested them, and it was like 10% different. So
Okay.
that blue lotus that grows in that greenhouse 30 years ago, maybe they're still around today, was only 10% different. But other than that, there are no known specimen anywhere in Egypt. So it's kind of a mystery as to what exactly the effect that they would have had. So again,
Very much so.
here's some of these vases. I don't know that these vases have ever been on display before, but you kind of have this OG style right here that looks a lot like Matt's vase.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they all have that sort of similar proportion and shape. I'd love to be able to 3D scan these or measure these somehow and compare them to Matt's face.
I mean, that's what we did at the Petrie Museum a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And what was insane is that the scale of them, you can have massive ones, and you can have, I got to scan ones that were about an inch tall. Tiny, tiny, tiny ones. And again, same proportions, same precision, like big, small. And and there was one guy, there was a private collector who's from England. When he heard that the Snake Bros were coming to town, he got in contact with them and was like, I'm a private collector, would you like to scan and look at my collection? So this guy came to the Airbnb with a suitcase. He just went through the London Underground with a suitcase of pre-dynastic vases, could be awesome. 15,000 years old, maybe. And he got them out and then was just like, here, and just gave me one. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I was holding it like it was someone's child. Actually, children bounce. Dynastic vases don't. I was like, oh my God, the pressure of this. But they scanned it, they got all the data. So they're soon there's going to be an amazing amount of data from all of these private collection dynastic vases, and it's the data is insane. So
now I'm not up to date on any recent postings of any of my friends in the last 6 weeks. I know that you didn't go 6 weeks ago, but how was that, by the way? I mean, and you haven't posted a video of it though.
No, I'm it's on my list of things to do. But what was really interesting was, so the Petrie Museum, like curators, the people who work there, it was so interesting because these people are like experts on these artifacts, yet they also don't know so much of context about them. It is missing. Like they had no idea, like the measurements and the surface softness, and because obviously people have looked at them and they've looked at what grave they came out of and just assigned them to a period of time when the grave came from. But like this woman was so intrigued, and she was watching us doing the scans, and this one guy, the little one, they were like, it's 2 millimeters, it's 2 millimeters thick inside this vase all the way around perfectly. And she was like, is it? Oh, how interesting. And she just had no idea. But and was super. It was almost like she was coming at it, and she was the kind of the expert person on these. And I was like, it baffled me that nobody had thought to scan them. Nobody had thought to catalog them. Nobody had thought to measure them. It was really amazing. But they were so lovely at the Petrie Museum, and they said anytime, they were like, any research that you want, please book back in. I said, has anyone ever done chemical? I was thinking of Land of Chem. I was like, has anyone done chemical analysis inside any of these vases? And she was like, no. You're welcome to if you want to bring a chemist down. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to do a call to action out there. If anybody would like to go to the Petrie Museum and do proper chemical analysis, please get in contact with me, because they're really up for it. They're so open. I don't think they don't fully understand like the implications that really studying these objects could bring.
Isn't that amazing? Like we don't really know. Okay, let's go simplest simplest explanation is that they're putting oil or wine or beer or something in these. Wouldn't those researchers want to know that?
Yeah, like what the chemical, if there was something contained in them, then there would be microscope, there would be some kind, and also is it like is there a theme that like some of them have the same chemicals in, or they're
Sure.
all different? It would tell whatever, it's just data. But like for example, she had no idea that like that there's any kind of mystery around how you would make them, and how they were different to the calcite, the crystal ones,
Mm.
the alabaster ones. That's what I meant. So yeah, we were trying to explain like what we were doing and why we would like. In fairness, we were going to scan. We were going to scan a modern day shaped stone vase from like IKEA to get, and then we're going to compare it to a dynastic one, compare it to the alabaster one, and so and. Yeah, she was all ears, but it was really interesting to be like, wow, like sometimes the curators of the museums just, it wasn't what were focusing on. They were focusing more on the archaeological side of it rather than like the engineering side. And when those two people marry, when those two sides marry, that's where we're going to get like so much knowledge.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were really open to it. So really cool that they're gonna the team are now gonna go, and they've been doing some. Adam Young is part of the project, and he's been doing some from New York, and then they've tested Matt's vases. So the Petrie museums, they're applying to, they've made contact, like friendly contact with people in Egypt for the Cairo Museum, and another one I think
That's
where
great.
maybe France or in the Netherlands. But anyway, so there's going to be such a huge database that's coming out, and it's all done. So. It's all done really properly, and yeah, it's there is definitely a mystery involved in the production of these vases and why they go back into history so far back.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to respond to this comment by Random. He says, something being left in there seems unlikely. Seems unlikely, but is not. Roman and Greek vases say they date back to 500-600 BC. You can detect wine in it like that. And so, having a vase that's, another, at least, couple millennia older, even though it's 2,000, 3,000 years older, it's still going to be detectable.
I mean, it's not something left, like they're not gonna look inside and go, ooh, there's a gooey residence. We're talking like forensic chemical analysis.
Yeah.
So we're looking at stone. You can forensically look at stone, and it has to be under the SEM machine. You have to magnify it. It's not like they're going to be like swiping and swatching actual goo and wine and remnants and things like that. We're looking at like microscopic forensic chemical analysis. So for example, the reason why you'd want to do it is you want to rule out that there was any kind of tool mark or machining mark that was, say if they were made by a metal tool, say that there was metallurgy back, there would be microscopic forensic proof of that. There would be if they would use any kind of heat in it again as well with the tool. So you can rule out going, okay, well, they didn't use any metals to make them, or we can rule out that they didn't use any heat or pressure, but you can only do that with like proper forensic chemical analysis. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah. Here's this comment, Gordon. Wonder what the exact volume is in these vases. Why make them so accurate if not to store exact amounts of known substances? I agree. It was commonly, I think it was Flint Dibble that said on the Joe Rogan podcast when they were talking about the vases, that he said something along the lines of like if they were mass produced or if they were made on a lathe, why are there not multiples of the same size? And that seemed like that was a premature statement because there are so many that look so similar to each other that have not been compared. Like this one right here is almost identical to Matt's OG vase. And it's almost identical to, I think it was Robert Schock at Cosmic showed a photo of a blue one that was serpentine, I think, that looked literally identical to this. And I've probably seen a handful of others that look identical to this. So it wouldn't surprise me if there are vases that are identical in measurements. If you're able to assemble them all from all these different museums around the world, bring them together in measurement, or just get the measurements and bring the measurements together, it wouldn't surprise me if there are duplicates of vases like this. So I agree with you that there was probably a system to it somehow that will eventually be identified when what Johanna was saying comes to fruition, that all these museums allow research to be done like you just did with the snakes. By the way, was that expensive to get done? How did that work out?
Oh, so Petrie Museum was, as far as I'm aware, it was free. You have to just apply for research access, which we had it booked in like a year ago.
No way.
Yeah, and so yeah, you just have to apply with your reason for research, and then work it out with the museum. Talking of like breaking the vases. I think it's amazing that they still allow people to do this, because obviously we were wearing gloves. I was sweating. I was never so stressed in my whole life, picking up these vases and putting them into the scanner and then putting them back and everything. But apparently it has happened where someone came in for research and smashed a dynastic vase. The pain. And I was like, oh my God, like, oh my, obviously they have like a market value, but they are also priceless. So it's, yeah, that was a lot.
That's my whenever I watch Matt's podcast and he has the vases out and like all of his guests get to handle the vases, I'm just thinking, oh, one of these days. I know
days. I drop everything, but yeah. There was a really interesting one. I don't know if this is going to work because I'm trying to show you on my phone on my camera, but there was this kind of vase that I hadn't seen before. Let me just play the video.
I'm gonna put you up here.
So hold on. So we've got. Can you see? No, here we go.
Okay, we can see a little bit there.
So look, it's like a tube with this like, whoa. Right? And with this amazing hole. And not only that, it's not a straight tube, it's on this like insane, it's kind of like flute shaped. Oh, it's amazing. I love this one. And I was like, that is so unique and amazing.
Never seen anything like that.
Never seen anything like it in the Petrie Museum. Yeah, there were some amazing artifacts in the Petrie. It was hard to keep focused because I was like, oh my God, there's cabinets and cabinets and cabinets. Oh, they also have a dead guy in a pot.
Really? Egyptian?
Pre-dynastic.
Whoa.
That was how they buried people before they put them in anything else. You'd be buried in a pot, which is ironic because we kind of come full circle because now people are getting buried in pods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that dude's just in the cabinet in the Petrie Museum. I was just like, okay, there's a dead person just right there. And yeah, so you'd be curled up in a little pot and left.
Interesting. That. So I'm guessing that something you said it was a Nubian grave. I'm sorry.
It would be it was pre-dynastic.
Pre-dynastic. So, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it was like 5000 BC.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like you remember the Nubian museum that's in Aswan? That's kind of what that reminds me of, is those very ancient, like primitive graves. But
amazing. I will. I'm going to do a video on this. And sorry, guys, I didn't prep. This was Luke's turn to do the show and tell. So I hadn't prepped any imagery. But yeah.
Yeah, we definitely, maybe next time or whenever you're ready, maybe after you release your video on it, the following raiders will go into your experience.
Good idea. Good plan.
Last thing, I got to visit the Grand Egyptian Museum, the new one that opened up. This is the photo of opening day. I walked in and so much I could say about it, but really it was just a really, really amazing museum. Absolutely jam-packed, full of artifacts, and I only had maybe 3 hours to go through it, and it's just not enough time. I could have gone through maybe just really, I walked through the whole thing, but like once I got halfway through, I just kind of speed walked the rest of it. There's I want to say there's 18 sections, and
Oh my God, you could spend an entire day there, couldn't you?
oh man, yeah,
Yeah.
it really, really, really amazing.
I'd
And
love to
so
see what they left in the old Cairo museum. I want to see how good that is now.
yeah, it's still jam-packed full
Is
of
it?
artifacts.
Okay.
It is, yeah. I don't know how much they've taken out because obviously I never saw it prior to the gem being open.
Mm-hmm.
But it looked like nothing had been taken out. It was still that full of
Okay.
artifacts. But there's a lot of space left in this museum for artifacts to come in. So I and the guy who was taking me around Egypt, Ahmed, he was telling me that he's not going to be surprised if this museum one day swallows up the Cairo museum, and just if they move all the artifacts from Cairo to here, and if they move all the artifacts from. Have you ever been to the Museum of Civilization? There's another museum. I didn't know that.
No, I just went to the Cairo one. I love the Cairo museum because the building is so old, and it's every time I walk in there, I feel like I am in The Mummy, which is set in like the 1920s, because it's the exact date. It's 100 years old, if not more, the building. And yeah, I feel like I'm in the Mummy movies, which is why I like the old one. But I'm excited to see the gem as well.
You'll love it. You'll love, and when we go, when you and I go, we'll have to go to the Civilization Museum because I haven't been there.
Okay.
And that's where all of the like the Deir al-Bahri cache, where the 12 pharaohs were found all buried together. All of their bodies are at that museum, and you get to see all the mummies and everything. So it's just a museum with more artifacts in it, and I'm sure there's interesting stuff there that doesn't commonly make its way to YouTube or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen that many videos from the Civilization Museum. So
no,
I got to see the gem. Really, really amazing. That's where I saw these pre-dynastic vases at, and there were more there that I'll put out in a video too. So really, really awesome. And back here you can see some alabaster stuff from the same time period. Oh, look at that right there. Can you see that little hieroglyph on that?
That one is amazing because I can see on the side it's got that kind of like circular bevel tubing that is on some of the boxes.
Yeah. So it's
similar technique.
Yeah, it's interesting. I loved it. So that's a very short recap of my Egypt.
A nice short 2.5 hours. There we are.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't even cover anything. There's so much more to discuss. So
and you're going back in January, right? Have you still got any spaces on your tour? Or
yeah. So we're shooting for 20 people. I want to say we're at 15, 16, 17 people. So we have
you got a few seats left.
Yeah, we have 3 to 5 spots left. If anybody is wanting to jump on this trip last minute, there's 3 to 5 spots left, and the tour begins January 13th through the 26th. So it's 2 weeks along the Nile, Alexandria all the way down to Aswan. So that's 2.5 months from now. And it's going to be amazing. Basically, you know how Egypt trips are. It's jam-packed from before sunup to long after sundown every single day. And you'll learn more about Egypt over the course of 2 weeks than you have ever learned in the entire time that you've enjoyed learning about Egypt. It's really, really cool. So if any of you guys are interested in hopping on at the last minute, you can go to Adept Expeditions, or you can look up Secrets of the Sands Egypt Tour Luke Caverns, and you'll be able to find it. Hope to see some of you guys there. But so I'm going back in January, and then maybe that'll be the time that I link up with you, like after the tour or something. Once we get some official stuff put down. And then if not, we're definitely going to be going at some other point, you and I.
I mean, Egypt's not going anywhere. It's been there for thousands of years. But it's definitely now that I've been like 3 times, and then I had a little Egypt break, and now I'm starting to get ready to go back to Egypt. So
yeah, absolutely. So this will be your 4th time. What is a site that you haven't been to that you'd like to go to?
That site that I can't remember the freaking name of. The one that's out in the desert, the oldest. That's the oldest carbon dated what they're going to call it, a temple. I really want to go there, and I think it's worth putting aside a day and taking like a jeep out to the desert and having a look at it. So yeah, I want to do that. I want to go back to the Osirian because it's my favorite site. Karnak's my favorite temple. Osirian's my favorite site.
Wow, Karnak is your favorite temple, huh?
I think it's my favorite temple. Yeah, just because there's so much there. You got Sekhmet and I'm gotta show you the damaged Stargate.
You know, I didn't see the Sekhmet statue either.
She's locked away in a little private chamber.
Okay, we'll have to do that too. There's so much.
There's so much to do, but definitely you want to go out there. Did you go to Tanis?
Nope.
I haven't been to Tanis either, so
we'll
maybe
have to do that.
Tanis and the temple that the name that I can't remember of the temple. I think it begins with a Q. It's kind of hard to say. They would be on top of my list for what I want to see, and I want to go back and see the Osirian, and I want to do a double forensic look at all of the Osirian and the enclosure of the Osirian as well.
Yeah.
So that's on my list. Other than that, I don't mind going on a Nile cruise. Won't say no to a Nile cruise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that too. Okay, so for me, Tanis. I didn't go to the Osirian, and I was at Saqqara and didn't go to the Serapeum. Can you believe that?
You didn't go?
No. So I was in Egypt for,
because you can climb on those boxes, like if no one's in there, it's great.
So I was in Egypt for 5 days on my own, but I did before our tour began. And I did Giza, and I did Dashur, and then I did the other 3 days at Alexandria, and then I did the gym. So I didn't do Saqqara until the last day.
And Saqqara is like the most amazing. Okay.
I know.
So, well, it's all right. You're going back. No problem.
So I did it it was on the 9th day of the tour. It was the last day. And when we were there, we had some people on the tour that were like, mobily handicapped. And so our tour operator at the last minute got us into some kind of super locked off pyramid that most people don't go into, and it was cool. We got to see. So there's the pyramid of Unas that has the pyramid text, but this was a different pyramid that also has pyramid text. So it was cool, but I was disappointed I didn't get to see the Serapeum. But I'll be there in a couple of months with hope maybe some of you guys watching. And so, yeah, I was disappointed I didn't get to see it, but excited that I have something to go to.
Also, okay, so definitely got to do Osiris shaft. You definitely have to do the Osirian. It is the coolest thing in Egypt. Okay, and I've just seen as well, we have not done any of the super chats. So I know, but we've got like a whole bunch tonight. So let's make sure we say hi and honor all the questions to the super chats.
All right,
thank you, Alexander.
I'll start first. We'll go back and forth. Now that you've experienced Egypt, please give Dr. David Rawls' alternative chronology a look. The changes fix a lot of issues. I will absolutely do that. Are you familiar with his work?
No, but I'm going to put that down in my notes. Dr. David Rawls.
I'll write it down. I have heard people recommend this to me so many times, but there's only so much time a day.
Yeah.
I'm going to write this down. But yeah, I will absolutely check this out. It'll be interesting to hear a different chronology and what parameters it stays within. Is it does it push it back? Does it push the chronology back thousands of years, or is it a rearrangement of the chronology in dynastic times? That'll be interesting. I think he has another paired comment. If Dr. David Rawls is correct, then he identifies Joseph's pharaoh with Amenemhat III of the 12th dynasty, and the Exodus pharaoh with Dudamos.
Okay. So Joseph, as in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, the pharaoh that he told the dreams to was Amenemhat III. Okay. Of the 12th dynasty, and the Exodus pharaoh was Dudamos. The Exodus. I know that there's a good link to the Exodus. Well, not that there is no archaeological evidence of an exodus in Egypt.
Sure.
However, what there is that there is Akhenaten. His he had like a high priest noble guy that was called like Ramoses.
Hmm.
And after Akhenaten, because Akhenaten was all about the idea of having a one god and spiritual connection via you as the portal to God, rather than externally through priests and through this like a hierarchy of religion. And through his reign, he was like reversing it all and making it all like a monolithic one god. And then after he died, all of the temple priests and the next pharaoh reverted it back to the old ways, where you could only access God through the priesthood, and there was a running away of all of the Akhenaten followers, that potentially led by Ramoses, who was his kind of like side mad priest. So there's an idea, there's a theory that that could have been like an origin story for the extra, and the people that ran away from went into like the lands of Canaan and became down the line became the Hebrews. So that's interesting. But I will look at this David role.
I'm really interested in reading this this roles chronology, and I should say I think I agree with you. I think it's pretty firmly established that the story of the Exodus happens somewhere around it's somewhere between Amenhotep III and then his son Akhenaten to Ramses. It's somewhere in that New Kingdom area. I'm not sure about Dudamos. However,
what a name. I like Dudamos.
Yeah,
what's your name? Dudamos.
However, there's probably some truth in his chronology. And I was telling Land of Chem this. I was like, these large, grand, like sweeping alternate theories, 90% of it could be wrong. But if 10% of it is right, it's a paradigm shift. That's what I was saying about Chris Dunn. As I was like, well, I don't know much about his pyramid power plant stuff. And there's some ideas that he has that I don't, I don't agree with. But if he's right about just one thing, it can change history, and I would imagine that a lot of these guys who have alternate theories, they're probably not entirely wrong. Because there's
a patchwork of everybody's ideas.
Exactly, it's a patchwork, and even if you're 10% correct, it's truly remarkable that you were, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking this out. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this David Rawl guy has to say about Old Kingdom. But Alexander, thank you very much for the chats. Jose, member for 6 months, thank you very much. Can't wait for this Saturday for the tour, Luke. So for anybody watching this Saturday in San Antonio, Texas, myself and the Snake Bros are doing an event called Afternoon at the Museum. And there's a San Antonio Ancient Art Museum here in town in San Antonio, Texas. And we are doing a tour through both of the Egyptian sections. So they've got these two huge ancient Egyptian sections, and there's some pre-dynastic vases there too that are really cool. They've got some doorways from the Old Kingdom and these old. It's really strange. It's like this. It's like the head of what was going to be a granite statue, and then they never finished the head. It's just like a mannequin head that's made in granite. Really interesting. And then so it goes from pre-dynastic all the way to Roman Egypt, and then we'll take like a 30-minute break. I'll do a little mini tour of the Greek and Roman areas, just kind of talking about a couple things and chatting it up. And then we'll meet up 30 minutes later and we'll go do a tour through the Ancient Americas section. And I'll take everybody through that and explain those sections. So there's a link to that on Eventbrite. It's called Afternoon at the Museum. You can just look it up. Afternoon at the Museum, Luke Caverns. It'll come up on Eventbrite. You can reserve a spot with us. So Jose, can't wait to see you there, man. Really looking forward. And then we have a dinner and lectures at this brewery called the Blue Star Brewery. Great food, and myself and the Snakes are going to be giving a lecture. So
I'm going to do an Eventbrite for my weekend of Pharaohs when I test.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, when I test drag the fake dead body.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna make an Eventbrite for it. Weekend at Pharaohs.
Yeah, I love it.
Funny old world.
So there's this is
wow, Peter Shell.
Yeah, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm not sure if in this little space here you were intending on typing a comment, but can't see it there. But Peter,
did it in invisible ink.
and Peter, I don't think this is your first dono like this. So thank you very, very much for being a very supportive patron. Johanna and I very, very much appreciate it. And it's extremely generous, profoundly generous. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll let you take this one.
Patterns of evidence is a good starter for roll. Okay, this roll guy.
This guy's getting some serious promotion.
Are you actually secretly Dr. Roll, Alexandra? Because I feel like you are self-promoting.
All right, let's see.
Oh, someone's put the name of the thing. Kasir El Saga. Sagha. Oh, mate.
Oh, yeah, that is right.
That's the site that I really want to go to in Egypt. That's the one.
Kasir El Sagha. Yeah, we'll have to look that up.
Kasir El Saga. Just say really fast with conviction. Wrong with conviction.
Okay, so yes, all right. So Alexander, thank you very much, and we will. Roll's getting some advertisement here. We're gonna have to reach out. I'll have to reach out to him. Maybe I'll have him. Maybe we have him on Raider
him as a guest.
Ooh, okay, yeah, we'll do that.
Because we're gonna start lining up our guests in this new year.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna let you take this one.
Conveniently, Ramses' son, Kwamaset, was the first Egyptologist, and he was also repairing and assigning ownership of the monuments. Well, yeah, absolutely, Ramses and Ramses' son, Ramses II. Oh, no, that'd be Ramses' son, and then there would be a second Ramses. That was not Ramses. Sorry, there we are. Was repairing and assigning ownerships. Well, yeah, they did that all over the gaff. Especially at Karnak, when you can see Ramses' name there's loads of different names, and then there's where they've rubbed off the old name, and then they've Ramses came in. It was a bit of a dick move, but he did it really, really deep, so you couldn't erase his name. I was like, all right, calm down, Ramses.
Yeah. It's everywhere too.
Yeah, and everywhere. So anything that says it looks like it's got Ramses' face on, I'm like, kind of bet it wasn't.
Okay, and then we got one more from Edfu too.
Hey team, hope you enjoyed Egypt. Luke, JJ, congrats on the latest BAM! Barabar Caves. Wondering what, if anything, the debunking brigade have said on it, because it was very compelling to me. The amazing thing about Barabar Caves and the debunking brigade is that it's really hard to debunk, because it's just the whole documentary is just scientific data collection. They don't really hypothesize anything to debunk. They're just stating the actual facts, and they're just showing very clearly all of the anomalies and scientific anomalies. So there's nothing you can't really debunk the fact that they found sound frequency correlation. You can't debunk how smooth a surface is. So it's just very, very interesting. I really recommend, if you don't know what the BAM documentaries are, Builders of the Ancient Mysteries. Yep. You can find them all on my channel or on the Builders of the Ancient Mysteries YouTube channel. They're for free, or you can pay to support them, pay a couple of dollars and watch it. They're like kickstarted documentary production company, and they do really good, high quality documentaries, all based in science, looking at ancient mysteries and all of the issues with the timelines and issues with the construction, issues with the architecture. Not when I say issues, I mean like the mysteries of it. They're like, it's brilliant. Barabar is one of my favorite mysteries in the world. But yeah, so far people can't really debunk it too much, because you can't argue with it.
Yeah, well, it was just the data.
It was just data collection going. The data points to something other than what we've been told.
I love your narration voice too. So good. You should do audiobooks. Have you ever done that before?
No, but I tell you, when we do the documentaries, they're 2-hour plus documentaries, and there's a lot of script, and we have a day or 2 days in the studio. So I'm reading at speed, and it's one of those things where I'm not even really understanding what I'm just reading and trying to make it sound as lovely as possible. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, did I say that?
Yeah. Are you able to retain it? are you able to retain it, or is it just kind of you're just focused on reading it and reading it well and not
no.
really like
Yeah, no, I'm just focusing on like pronouncing the words and then making sure that they sound, because we're translating it from French to English, because there's someone else that does the original French.
okay.
So and I help with the translating of it. And sometimes, even though you can translate French to English
Sure.
directly, it still doesn't quite make sense in English. And we have a lot of back and forths of going, we just don't talk like that, even though it is technically correct English. You would never say that in a sentence, or you wouldn't describe something with that exact word translated. And there are some words in French that just don't really have a English. I can't off the top of my head think about it now. So yeah, we're so busy trying to get like a translation that makes sense. I had to I watched it as if I was just a viewer, and I took notes from my own documentary. I was like,
it's almost more than translation. It's like interpreting. Almost.
It is. That's exactly what it is. It's interpreting, because if I just said it, so the first BAM movie, I didn't interpret it so much. I just helped to translate it, which is why it still comes off as a slightly foreign. Whereas we got into a flow with Barabar and for the next one, and I'm really good friends with Patrice, the director now. So I'll just go, Patrice, it don't make sense. Sorry, honey. Well, we wouldn't say that. Can I do it in my own words? And he's like, yeah. Do it in your own words.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's lovely. You should maybe Graham will reach out to you, or somebody should get Graham to reach out to you to do his audiobooks. Actually, he does his own, but
he does his own. He ain't gonna give
there are so many people in our genre that need a better audiobook narrator, and I feel like you are like the perfect person to do that.
And yeah, it's weird, but I actually have a slight lisp in my
really.
Yeah, I do, and I really have to work when I'm doing the narration. Otherwise, I'm like, and I become over aware of it when I'm in the booth with the thing, and I feel like I'm just going the whole time. But I have to work on my lisp.
Well, if it means anything, I've never noticed it. And I have probably heard you talk more than I've heard many other people talk.
Well, when I'm relaxed, I don't have it as much. It was actually when I was at drama school, and I was a bit stressed. I was doing Shakespeare, and my teacher said it to me. She was like, "You're aware you've got a lisp, right? And it comes out when you're stressed." I was like, "No, thank you for saying that in front of everybody."
That's funny. No, I had no idea. Okay, all right. So, and Ed Fu, thank you very, very much. JJ, did Zahiawas give you grief on access or report? I think at this point I am flying so far under Zahiawas's radar that I could walk around all of Egypt and basically do whatever I want without him ever knowing who I was.
Wait till he hears about Weekend at Pharaoh's. He's not going to.
Oh my God. You know that, if we did that, that would make headlines. People would go, Johanna James, it'd be YouTuber Johanna James drags balloon
drags a life-size inflatable man, a life-size inflatable pharaoh to demonstrate the preposterous idea it was a tomb. I
think Zahiawas probably would hear about that.
Maybe I'll do it. I'll come in disguise.
Yeah,
I will dress as a man. They'll never suspect, and I will go incognito. And I know I'll put it up on my channel as, look at this footage I found. This lost footage. I found a VHS tape in the sands, and it showed.
Love it. I love it.
Because I'm testing the limits of getting chucked out of Egypt with that, but for science.
I don't think you would. I think you could pay off the guards and be like, I have this inflatable man that I'm going to bring down here with me, and they will go, present? Baksheesh?
I'll be like, yes, lots of baksheesh. Thank you very much.
My God.
I'll just say it's my inflatable support man.
Yeah. Everywhere I go, in some places, for anybody who's traveling to Egypt on your own, if you're on a tour, you don't really have to worry about it. But everywhere I went, like I would walk into some temple, and I felt like there would be just a guy who lives down the street from the temple that would pay access to get in. And then he stands in some dark corner where guards can't see him. And you walk around the corner and he goes, baksheesh, and makes you feel like you have to pay him or something. So anything kind of getting back to what Zahi, or what this guy's saying about Zahi, on access, you can basically get anywhere you want to in Egypt if you have enough
If you
money.
pay. It's such a corrupt system.
I don't think there's anything in Egypt. I was asking this guy that was running our tour, who was the tour operator, who is Egyptian, and I said, okay, so in Mexico, things like Pakal's tomb, some of these chambers at Calakmul that have this, this very rare and sacred blue Maya paint. These things are so sacred and cut off that maybe the president of Mexico could get access to it if he wanted. But he would have to pay the Institute of Archaeology a lot of money to do so. I was like, what is there in Egypt that is so sacred that money can't get you access? And he goes, nothing.
Yeah, no, nothing.
And I was like, whoa, wow.
Which is, yeah.
You don't think about that. I mean, this is the most, sacred, important archaeological country to ever exist. But if you have enough money, you can basically do anything you want.
I think it also lies in the, because ancient Egyptians, because it was overthrown like 300 AD, and there was the Arab overthrow and invasion, and now Egypt is modern Egypt is very much it's a different people and culture almost that run it, and so it's slightly removed. Like, they are sacred, but they run the entire country's run off tourism from it. They make money, they milk that cow. It is all about getting eyes on it, bums on seats, sheep through. It's odd, but I can understand why there's like a slight disconnect, because it's not like 5,000 year history of the modern day Arab culture. It's a different culture, but
yeah, exactly. I totally agree. It's the disconnection. Whereas in Mexico, they are directly connected.
Yeah, like it's like this was literally us for 5. Yeah, it's not so. Roll is very conservative. And his changes, and he focused on the second intermediate period. He has Akhenaten at the same time as King David.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in reading this now.
Yeah, I need to get the timeline. I want to get the two timelines together and see.
Yeah. Well, we'll use our super chat fund, and we'll each order a copy of
put that on my Amazon Christmas wish list.
Thank you guys very much. And thank you, Alexander, for your thorough. Actually, David Roll should be thanking you for your promotion of his work to us. But I think because of your comments, we're probably going to have him on Raiders. I'm going to reach out to him and see if I can't get him to come on. I think that would be a really, really cool conversation. Just start at the beginning and go all the way through and ask him, his different chronology, and to have him explain that to you and I and to the rest of the Raiders too. I think that'd be really cool. So, all right. And then we got Edfu here.
I mentioned the second BAM because I believe Dr. Miano did a video response to the first BAM where he was disputing the interpretation of the data. I mean, he's very welcome to. I would say two differences is the first documentary is building ancient mysteries all over the world, Easter Island to South America to Egypt to everywhere. So there's lots of different things. There's more scope for people to interpret or do response to. But I would also say that all of the experts that they source for the BAM and the Barabar, they are experts, like stonemasons, engineers, people who are like really prolific in their field, and they go to these people for interpretations. Whereas Dr. Miano, I believe his expertise is in like archaeology, I believe.
And Mediterranean archaeology. I think it's just general.
And this is what I was trying to say with the Petrie Museum, where there is a disconnect of knowledge, because the archaeologists at the Petrie Museum, who were experts in where these vases were found, who own them, where they're tracking the kind of the story that where Petrie found them, and they're really good catalogers of history. But where they had zero knowledge was stone masonry or technical engineering, mathematical engineering, because that's not what they're experts in. So I would say that Dr. Miano he's welcome to do a response video, but he is disputing the interpretation or the data that's coming from experts in the field, stonemasons of 25 years plus, going, this is not achievable by this means, or this is something so extreme or so different, or the timeline's not right here, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, he's welcome to, but he's going up against a multitude of professional experts.
Yeah. Ed Fu said, I find it's telling that they haven't touched the second BAM.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly that. Like I think it would be difficult to dispute it without disputing all of the machinery that has been doing all of the tests. And they did a lot of tests. A lot of I don't care about his opinion. He's welcome. I think all opinions are welcome, because I can't like say one person's opinion isn't welcome, because therefore everyone's isn't. So it's a free pass. Everyone gets a theory, everyone gets an opinion.
Yep. So, okay, well, we're wrapping it up there. This is
wrapping it up.
Far been our longest episode.
This is the longest Raiders.
But you called it the other day. You were like, well, we should set aside some time because Egypt is going to go on.
I thought Egypt's going to be a good 2-3 hours for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, well, wrapping it up, what do you have in the near future?
I've got 2 videos that I'm working, or I need to get the vase one out. And this week I got to interview the director and the presenter of a new documentary that's out on Amazon called The Atlantis Puzzle, which I've been raving about. I think I mentioned it a couple of times, maybe on Raiders. I came across it and I watched it on Amazon, and it was a brand new documentary looking back at the texts of Cretaeus and Timaeus, and there was basically the guy that went to the Rikat structure in 2008, way before there was even a thing called YouTube. And no, I think YouTube was existing in 2008, but before, he was really going. He went out and he took all this equipment, and he did a lot of research, and he was the one that came up with the Rikat structure as a possible Atlantis theory, which was later made very, very popular by other people on YouTube, and but did not credit him. Well, I was not aware that this guy was the original researcher of all of this, but he is interviewed in this documentary, and they look into his research. That he also translated the Greek, and he put some very, very interesting points about the translation of Plato, the translation in the 1800s. That he was like, he's contesting the 18th century translation, and it's really interesting what he does. So I got to interview Jack, and I recorded it, and I'm gonna make a video, because I think everybody should watch the documentary, but they should also watch my chat with Jack, because it was really, really cool, and it's reignited my Atlantis passion, because there's some new information. It's cool.
Awesome. Very cool. I'm excited to see that. For myself, I've got 4 weeks before I do an Olmec tour in December. And I think there's probably a few people in the chat here that are joining me on that. Very excited for that. But I have lots of YouTube things to knock out between now and then. So up soon, I have an Olmec video. It's called Olmec Megaliths You've Never Seen Before. And then I'm launching a new series that I have had in the chamber for a little while. And that's called Big Screen History. And it's just me doing the historical accuracy movie analysis, movie reviews.
Yeah.
So the first one is going to be Troy. That's going to be the first movie that I review. And then I'm also piecing together and writing my collaborative video with Land of Chem. So I got those coming in the next few weeks.
And you have to do a Gladiator 2 review.
Oh, yeah. So,
which apparently is good. So the rumors say.
I'm glad.
Initial reports saying it's really good.
Yeah. Nerd Erotic. I was on the phone with him here recently. Forbidden Frontier and that little group of people who live in Texas. We're all going to go see it together.
Oh, amazing!
That next Friday, I think. So
yeah, it's
Thursday night,
real soon.
Like that.
I'm so excited.
I'm really excited, and I hope it's really, really good. I really hope it is. So, but that's what I'm up to. Let me think. Community updates. So for Raiders in 2025, we're going to get nailed down with a better schedule. It's just been kind of hectic and busy, and my travel schedule has been insane. But when I get back, February 1, or at the beginning of February, we're going to put out an announcement. We'll probably maybe
we'll have a schedule.
Yeah, we'll put out a schedule, and it will have defined dates, for the next 6 months or something like that.
But it's loosely going to be, we're going to do Monday. It'll be 1 p.m. Texas time, 7 p.m. English time. And so we're going to aim for like Mondays, 1 p.m., 7 p.m.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll try to put out a schedule, and we'll try to stick to it as best we can, while kind of, going around both Johanna and I's travel schedules. And I just apologize. Like, my travel schedule the last 6 weeks was not good at all. That's why
you disappeared into the ether, but I know you were having a fantastic time.
Yeah. So I'm back for a little bit now. So we'll get another episode or two in before I leave again. And then top of the year, we'll put out a schedule for everybody. And then once we commit and we have like a solid schedule, we'll really be able to grow the show and do it more often too. So, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in on a random Monday that we just pop online. We have a super consistent audience tuning in, and I think I speak for both of us when I say very, very grateful for you guys watching. I can't believe we're like 5 or 6 months into the show now too. Can you believe
know, it's mad. But whenever people go, oh, I really want to make a podcast, I'm like, just do it. Just do it scrappy. Just scramble it together, work it out along the way. I think you can like overthink it and then you never ever do it. We just started not really knowing what we're doing. And now look at us now.
Yeah. It's pieced together. So a year from now, which I would think a year from now, it feels like a long time, but the last 6 months just flew by.
Yeah. A year from now, I'll be super professional.
Yeah.
With
a year from now, we'll be really professional, but we didn't have any tech issues today.
I know. Don't.
So anyways, another thing we have yet to do is come up with a proper outro. So what do we say this time?
Well, we'll just say thank you and good night.
Yep. Thank you, Raiders, very much. Have a good night, and we'll see you all again soon.